Leahy.
Here.
Gamba.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Codes.
Here.
Ingram.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. At this point, I would invite anyone who would like to speak to us about any topic that is not on this evening's agenda. Please come up to the podium, give us your name and address, and try and limit your comments, if you could, to 3 minutes. Yeah, right there. Just speak into the microphone.
My name is Anna Mae Klein. I'm a local, been here my entire life. I live on 63 Market Drive. It was recommended that I come tonight to find out. Morris Andrietta was my cousin. He was the one that passed away in the Garfield County Jail on June 21st. We have scheduled a memorial service. However, we are struggling to meet some financial obligations through parks. It was recommended that I bring it to you guys and see if possibly you guys might be able to maybe help us out and kind of waive some of the park fees that we're faced with. We're third generation Klein. You know, we've been here our entire lives. There's not a soul here that my cousin and myself don't know. And I was just kind of wondering if maybe there was something you guys could do to kind of help us out in this situation.
We usually don't take this opportunity to have any back and forth dialogue between us and the public, but I think we'll discuss this with our staff and someone will get back with you.
Okay.
All right?
We've currently reserved Two Rivers Park. It's going to be an open community event, just for the simple fact that we've.
And what's the date of it?
August 11th.
August 11th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And what is the fee?
August 11th is on a Saturday.
No, what's the fee? What is the fee that parks?
I'm looking at roughly about $1,500 total. It's $1,000 deposit and then another $500 for the basic park fee, I guess. I've been in touch with Yvette at the Parks and Rec office, and she's been kind of working with me. It was recommended through John Martin as well as Yvette to kind of come forward and present this with you guys and to see if maybe you guys would be willing to kind of help us a little bit because we're really strapped and we've got benefit accounts set up, but we have gotten like nothing. Nobody is donating, nobody is helping us, and we're kind of rounding that corner right now. So.
All right. Thanks. We'll take that into consideration and talk with our staff about it, and someone will get back with you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak to us about any item not on this evening's agenda? All right.
Mayor, before you get started, I don't know if you want to let the public know that you're going to take.
I was going to do that.
Okay.
Very next item.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So one of our items on the agenda this evening is it's agenda item 24, which is the consideration of the adoption of our new municipal code related to land use and development that we've been working on for 2.5 years, and significant. There's a lot of concern regarding the language in that ordinance related to the location of wireless communication facilities. Because of that, we are going to hold a special council meeting on, when did I say? Tuesday, July 31st at 6 p.m. to discuss primarily wireless communication facilities as they relate to our new code. So I just wanted to let everyone know that. So you will have an opportunity at that meeting to give us testimony and probably get feedback from the council and staff. I don't believe we have any other agenda changes. Are there any council comments?
Yeah, we have August 18th, the Airport Commission is having an airport open house. Aviation Expo from 8 to 3. There's airplane rides, live music, food vendors, 5K and a 1K race, silent auction. If you can, and if anybody wants to go, you're talking to folks, please have them park at the rodeo grounds. We're trying to arrange shuttles from the rodeo grounds, the city's rodeo grounds, to the main area. It's all, of course, dependent on if we have a Chinook there landing and taking off, still fighting that fire. If so, we're either going to scale back and move the event, or we're going to cancel it altogether. So right now it's on, but to be determined. I'll just pass this out.
Thanks, Jonathan. Go ahead, Sean.
I'd like to just a reminder for the community that the Riverfest, it's sponsored by the Glenwood Springs River Commission. It's their annual Riverfest. They do a river cleanup and then a celebration and music in the park. It's a lot of fun. It's Saturday, August 4th. And if you go online on the city website, you can find out how to sign up and come out and enjoy the day. Thanks.
Any further council comments? All right, seeing none, I would move on to the consent agenda. Our consent agenda this evening includes the receipt of our minutes for our July 5th, 2018 meeting, Resolution 2018-25, which is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, appointing the Garfield County Clerk as a coordinated election official and appointing the City Clerk as the City Election Officer for a coordinated election for the November 6, 2018 election. Ordinance number 16, series of 2018, and ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, amending Title 050 of the City of Glenwood Springs Municipal Code by adding Article 050-100, entertainment districts, and enabling the establishment of entertainment districts pursuant to Title 12, Article 47 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. This is the second reading. Ordinance number 17, series of 2018, and ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, amending Section 090.030.010 of Glenwood Springs Municipal Code pertaining to designation of Blake Avenue Park. This is also a second reading. Ordinance number 18, series of 2018, and ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, amending Section 040.020.170 of the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code that provides for an additional economic incentive program option for new development to extend the sunset provision for 2 years to July 15, 2020. This is also a second reading. We're considering the award of a bid, bid number 2018-033 for an extended cab heavy-duty 1-ton 4x4 pickup, and Resolution 2018-26, a resolution of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, imposing fees in water and electric enterprise funds. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion by Shelley and a second by Jonathan to approve the consent agenda. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to agenda item 16, we have a joint application with the town of Newcastle for State Trails Colorado the Beautiful grant. Are you providing a presentation on this?
Newcastle was supposed to be here to update you guys, but there could have been some miscommunication. I can go ahead and kind of take us through it. This has been a high priority for council for a while. I think we have decided to partner with Newcastle on planning and construction, and I think the least expensive part to build is from Newcastle to starting in Newcastle to Glenwood. So I think it is, if we can get some done starting there, it'll give us some momentum as we go forward for other larger federal grants. So staff is recommending that we go ahead and partner with Newcastle, which means we will not be applying for this grant. We'll be a co-applicant, and that we commit up to $100,000 in Conservation Trust Fund reserves should the grant be awarded. I'm also going to recommend later in the evening that we go after an FMLD grant together for the partnership grant with Newcastle for LOVA.
Okay. Are we offering the services of our grant writer in this effort?
I have, yes.
Okay. Have they taken us up on that offer, or?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if I've told the grant writer that yet or not. We should get through the Build America grant that was due today.
Okay. Okay.
Good idea.
Any questions for Deborah?
Where's the Conservation Trust Funds? What is that? How do we get it in? How much of the balance is it?
They are from lottery funds.
Okay.
They are supposed to be used for park amenities.
And are they just
Ryan
given
started.
to local municipalities? I mean, do we have a chunk in there if we're committing 100,000? Is that right?
Yes, we do. We have, Brian, do you remember?
361,000. Yeah, we currently have just a little under 400,000. I think 361,000 is what I heard. So we have a fund balance in there, and we bring in about $100,000 worth of revenue into that fund each year, and we're committing 100,000 to the grant matching.
Thank you.
In my view, it's a very large project. I think our latest estimate is $25 million, which is a large hurdle. But if we're going to do it, we need to get started, and we need to actually be committed to help paying for it. We'll never get grant funding for 100% of it. But if we can get a bunch of grants that we only have to pay 10% of, it helps.
So is there a difference, Deborah, between the Conservation Trust dollars and the Colorado the Beautiful dollars? I couldn't understand that in the agenda.
Yes. One is a grant program. The other is money that we get allocated directly from lottery funds. We get them every year.
About, what, 100,000 a year or something from the Conservation Trust?
Yes. And we typically use it to improve parks, the community center. I mean, they're supposed to be designated for recreational activities.
So if we spend $100,000 there, then that puts us in the arena to compete for the Colorado the Beautiful money? Is that kind of what I'm reading between the lines here?
There's a 30% match required. Newcastle has a much smaller budget than we do and far fewer resources. They're committing $30,000, and I believe RAFTA committed $20,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Deborah? I would open this up to the public for any public comments on this item. Seeing none, I will close it to the public and bring it back to council for discussion and/or a motion.
I move to approve the joint application for the State Trails of Colorado, the Beautiful grant, with the City of Glenwood Springs contributing up to $100,000 in Conservation Trust funds.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Jonathan and a second by Rick. The motion is to approve the joint application for the State Trails Colorado the Beautiful grant in conjunction with the town of Newcastle, and to commit up to $100,000 of Conservation Trust funds as part of the required match. Any further discussion? Let's go ahead and call the question.
Ingram, yes. Godus, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kaup, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, moving on. Next item is a proposal for surveying services for 6th Street, Laurel Street to 6th Street from Laurel Street to Pine Street.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm here this evening to present this proposal. It's one of 3 items that relate to 6th Street and the overall $100,000 budget that's been identified for 6th Street interim improvements. This item is particular to a plan to install festival lighting from 8 metal poles and striping, new travel lanes with bike path, a 2-way bike path on the north of 6th Street between Laurel and Pine, and angle parking also on the north side, and then banners that would be on those poles where the string lights would be kind of bistro or Larimer Square kind of twinkle lights. In order to install those lighting poles outside of the sidewalk area, we would need to obtain easements for those poles. And this is the proposal for the surveying work that is necessary for that. There are 2 other items on the agenda this evening before you. Surveying services for CDOT's relinquishment of a portion of 6th Street to the City of Glenwood Springs, and then also sorry, there's a need for a correction in this memo of the three. It says $19,000 for landscaping for the North Landing, and it's actually $19,104. And I bring that up because all of those dollar figures would be coming out of a $100,000 budget that's been identified for all of the 6th Street interim improvements. And we believe that will not be sufficient for all of the work. So either additional funding would need to be allocated in 2018, or the City Council would need to consider additional monies in 2019 in the budget. And with that, I'm open to any questions that you might have.
When is this work expected to take place? Is it scheduled for 2018? I mean, if we have the funding, were we trying to get this work done in 2018?
We are. There's other pieces, including working with CDOT to take the portion of roadway back from that section that was the highway between Laurel and Pine, and so it is sort of dependent on all of these pieces fitting in together. But yes, the intention was for this work to happen in 2018.
Okay. Any other questions for Jen or Matt? Shelley.
Thanks, Jen. I had a quick question on, a couple of questions on the poles. So are those poles being placed in this plan? Does this fit and comply with the longer-term 6th Street plan, so that I just don't want to see us put these poles in and then go out and move them in a year or two, pull them out and...
I think in general the geometry will stay the same, and the poles are identified based on an aerial map today, and they may move slightly because there are some property owners in the area that have some idea of what their plans might be, and so I think we would be working with those property owners to, in a couple of cases, kind of tweak the pole location just a little bit. But yes, I think in general that the geometry is what will be there for a long time.
Okay, so
that could change, but I think that's the intention.
Okay, but this kind of fits with the plan that was done for 6th Street?
The 6th Street right-of-way that's identified in the 6th Street plan may not be entirely correct. Okay. And the surveying work will help us with that, but my understanding is that the right-of-way is 59 feet, and that the 6th Street plan identifies it as 75 feet. So okay. I think that the exact layout is perhaps will change, but the property owners in the area have they like this plan, and in general it keeps that. It would make a difference of 2 lanes of traffic going each way, or just 1 lane of traffic going each way, and I think that's where we've gotten to. But it has the angle parking on the north and the 2-way bike lanes on the north of the street as well.
And then the parallel parking or angle parking on the north too?
The angle parking, there's angle parking that's on the private property on the south, and then angle parking on the north as well.
Okay, and sorry, my other question is, so when I look at this plan, it looks like some of those poles are right in the middle of the sidewalk, but I assume that's not happening, right?
And that's why that's why we're looking for this these surveying services to keep them out of the sidewalk.
To keep them out of the sidewalk. So they'll be in a landscape strip, presumably.
So basically what's happening is that we want the poles and the lights to span the entire right-of-way, so from back of walk to back of walk. Right now the right-of-way on the north is pretty much the back of walk. Okay. So when the Brew Garden went in, for instance, there was a light pole right there that was behind the back of walk, and they wanted to put their fence right along the property line. We had to move our streetlight pole. So in essence, what we want to do is go from back of walk to back of walk with pole and pole, so that it's spanning the entire right-of-way, and then we have free will to do whatever the final 6th Street plan wants to be in the future. Okay. And it kind of encompasses it all with the lighting plan.
And how big are these poles?
The last time I
guys
saw,
know?
I think Bob Odo had them around like a 6-inch. I think Bob Odo's kind of working on the foundations for them. They're about a
Right.
6-inch
He's doing
aluminum
structure.
steel
Yeah.
pole.
Okay, so they're not.
They are not
Okay.
large structures, no.
Okay.
And they're looking at about 24 feet, I think, in height, so that the lights are up high enough when they kind of arc back down with the droop
That there's
17 and a half
plenty of
plus or minus feet
clearance.
of clearance kind of thing.
Okay, great. And then one last question on the landing site. Right now, when you walk over the bridge, there's the landing site that kind of has the temporary fence around it, and it's all dirt right now. And then there's a landscape strip between the new sidewalk and the road. What's going in there? And is that consistent with the plantings? You know, I guess I'm looking at, I realize we're talking about sodding, and so putting grass in temporarily on that landing site right now. But in order just to keep maintenance down and watering down, I'm wondering if the planting in that strip area is going to maybe match the landscaping that Shannon Murphy has planned. You know, the flowers and dry land, kind of low maintenance stuff that's going into the 7th Street.
Without looking at that.
Is there any
6th
coordination
Street,
there?
The roundabout plan to know whether or not that planting strip is identified, I would have to look at the plans.
Oh, on the, yeah, right, does it carry over from the roundabout plan too for the landscaping?
I would have to go back and look at them again also, but I don't believe it actually expands that far out, and CDOT's going to leave it in the condition that they're planning on the plans, which is they're going to hydro-seed it. They're hydro-seeding, in theory, they're hydro-seeding the north landing in that little bit of area right there, but they're not providing irrigation, so they're just providing dust control. The thing you'll see a little bit later on, that irrigation for that little strip right there and the north landing is incorporated into that budget, if we want to move forward with that.
Okay, 'cause I thought there were some pipes coming out of there that looked like irrigation, but it sure would be nice if that strip kind of landscaped and coordinated with, you know, the roundabout area and
So
the whole
CDOT
theme through there. It would tie it together.
So CDOT did plan okay in that area. They did provide conduits from one side of the sidewalk to the other for irrigation, for lighting if we wanted to expand it. So all of that infrastructure is there. They just aren't planning on installing any of it.
So that might be a question for Shannon, and find out if that's part of the, because we've got 500,000 going into landscaping.
I
in this
think
whole
that it
area,
isn't, but
right?
we will
6th
confirm
Street.
that.
Okay, that
We
would
will-
that
we
would be
will
great.
confirm
Yeah,
that.
you can let me know later.
We will.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Shelley. Any further questions for Jen or Matt? Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, I will close it to public comment and bring it back to council for,
I think we got one person.
oh. I didn't, sorry, didn't.
Oh, I thought it was a head fake.
It wasn't a thing. I should play basketball, except for height and all that things. I love that that's going in. I'm sorry.
Give us your name again, just for the record.
Norm Batchelor.
Thanks, Norm.
With the Hotel Colorado. And I'm glad that the city is considering lighting. And I love that it's back of right-of-way so that you can change the layout as you choose. I think sometimes just anything that makes sense that can be used, we'll be glad that we have in the future, sets a tone that something is happening. And I think it's going to be very well received for the 6th Street group of people. So thank you for considering it.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the public who would like to comment on this item? All right, seeing none, I will close it to the public and bring it back to council for discussion and a motion.
Motion.
Right, Doug. I was just waiting for you to go. Sorry.
I would move to approve the proposal for surveying services on 6th Street and Laurel to Pine from SGM.
Second.
Got a motion by Todd and a second by Rick to approve the SGM surveying proposal for surveying services on 6th Street between Laurel and Pine. Any further discussion?
Do we, sorry, yes. Do we are we taking these one by one, or is
This is just
the 14?
This is just item
sorry.
17. Isn't it just one proposal?
Oh, sorry.
They're separate items.
Okay, I'm just looking at the
Okay, yeah, 'cause the
memo.
memo kind of addressed them all together.
Yeah.
That's,
So this is just agenda item 17, which is the surveying proposal in the amount of
$14,000.
$14,000.
Sorry. Thank you, just.
Yep. Okay. Any further discussion? Let's call the question.
Ingram, yes. Godus, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kelp, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
The next item is an update on the right-of-way mapping for 6th Street.
So this is the second of those items. This is, this proposal also from SGM is for surveying work that would need to be done in order for the city to regain the ownership of 6th Street from Laurel to Pine. And this would allow us to make those pedestrian improvements, including the striping and those light poles. So at your last meeting, you took the first of the steps that's necessary for this in passing a resolution that is needed to move forward. CDOT's Transportation Commission will also need to pass a resolution with a survey and legal description, and this proposal would be for that work. And it is for $35,000. We do think that there will be some, because there's overlap in these scopes of work, that there may be a little cost savings that's related to that.
Okay. Any questions regarding this proposal to Jen or Matt? All right, seeing none, I'll open it up to the public. Anyone in the public would like to comment on this item? All right, seeing none, I will bring it back to council and entertain a motion, or for discussion and or a motion.
Move to approve $35,000 for surveying services for CDOT's relinquishment of a portion of 6th Street to the city of Glenwood Springs.
second.
The request is for an amount not to exceed $35,000. Are you willing to?
Not to exceed.
Not to?
Are you willing to put that in there that way?
Yeah, I thought that I was clearing my throat. I meant to say that, yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'll accept the friendly amendment.
Okay, that sounds good. Is the second okay with that amendment?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion by Jonathan and a second by Shelley to approve surveying services for CDOT's relinquishment of a portion of 6th Street to the city of Glenwood Springs for an amount not to exceed $35,000. Any further questions or comments? Let's go ahead and call the question.
Ingram, yes. Godus, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kelp, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, next item is the beautification of the 6th Street landing site.
Okay, that would be me. I let way too many people go on vacation this week.
You let who did? Who?
I know. Okay, same general spot we've been discussing, the landing site. Really, we have a couple of options with what to do. We can leave the hydro seeding in place with the mulch. It will be difficult to maintain and not as attractive. We can just irrigate it, or we can irrigate it and put sod down for about $19,104. We are recommending that we go ahead and irrigate it and put sod down. It will be much less maintenance, and I think it will make the 6th Street area happier.
So you're doing sod instead of, you're recommending sod instead of hydro seed?
Yes.
Okay, but in that 19,104, there's both sod and hydro seed under the estimate for
Sod and irrigation, I think.
Yeah, irrigation sod should be.
There's an estimate at the end of this. There's 4 items under sprinklers. Item number 3 is sod area of 11,000 square feet. And the next, for 10,000, the next item is hydro seed, bluegrass, 11,000 square feet.
Okay, Matt just said yes.
So they're both
They're both in there.
So
can we take one out?
We can take the $940 out.
No, that's a prep.
No, prep. Where's the height?
We can take the 10,000 out or the 1870.
1870.
1870 out.
Is that staff recommendation?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless I'm missing something and we need both met, which I'm assuming we don't.
So I had an interesting conversation with the gentleman that actually put this proposal together. He's actually recommending we go with the hydro seeding and the irrigation as the package. He believes he can get grass to grow in about 30 days with the hydro seeding and the irrigation. So I hate to really, the 10,000 is easier to remove because it's a nice round number. From that. So I'm throwing this at Deborah at the last second, but I did have a very long conversation with David Small, who put this proposal together, and he believes that if we fence it off, the irrigation's done correctly, the topsoil that Gould has provided over there is really good topsoil that he can get grass to grow in about 30 days.
Okay, I'm changing my recommendation.
The other side of that is you have to keep people off of the sod for 2 to 4 weeks before it'll root in. So what's the difference other than we save $8,000?
That sounds like a difference.
Idea.
That's not like government.
All right.
So, and CDOT's actually going to hydro seed it for us with the seed mix that David was going to use. So we'll really only be hydro seeding what's necessary to get the trenching for the irrigation to go in. So we'll probably save even money on top of that 1870 or whatever it is. But it would like to be approval for the $19,100 some odd dollars minus 10 grand. And we can get that all done.
And is this fully installed sprinkler system? I mean,
Yes.
burying lines and all that, it's not a temporary?
This is the sprinkler riser, the meter, the irrigation for the section that Shelley brought up earlier within the little buffer zone, and a full irrigation system with a battery operated time clock for now. For the system, yes. So it's
And an appropriate backflow preventer that
correct, 100%.
the city would appreciate.
Yep.
Okay, so just for what it's worth, the $19,104 minus $10,120 is $8,984. So.
Why, just because it was chaotic, how about we do like a not to exceed 10,000, just in case something changes tomorrow?
That sounds like perhaps a reasonable estimate.
That's a good
What did you
idea.
come up with?
And I'm,
9,000, right here.
my same
9,000.
comments hold for that
8,984,
How
that's
about
what I
enough to
got.
exceed 9,000?
area.
What's that?
That's gonna be my motion.
My same comments hold for the strip area. I
Yep.
was on the wrong.
I was trying to dig up those plans and I couldn't quite get to them
Okay.
before this conversation. I don't believe that is in those plans. I have never seen it go that far down 6th Street.
Okay.
But if we do the not to exceed 10,000, maybe we could float some into it over there.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for Matt?
So when will we see it green, Matt?
In a month.
He is willing to start immediately. I do not believe we have possession of that particular piece of property as of yet, but.
I do not believe we do.
Can we? Sort of. Can we push the limit a little bit so we can get the damn grass down? I'm darn, sorry, I didn't mean to.
We're asked nicely.
Yeah, okay.
The only question I have is, this is a temporary measure. We're not sure yet what the longer-term use of that property will be. Park, buildings, some of both, whatever. Is there anything about this sprinkling irrigation system that is going to sort of interfere with whatever ultimate use happens on that site?
So we'll need an irrigation system for the little buffer zone there anyhow, so we need the riser, the tap, and everything that goes along with it. You know, if there's a little green area out front of whatever gets developed in there, we can keep it for that. But in general, everything from the sidewalk to the south will probably go away with whatever the development opportunity is, but we still need to sprinkle that buffer zone, and this is our opportunity to do that.
Okay.
I think if we don't, it's going to remain dusty and dirty and.
So it might be a good idea if David tries to place his valve manifold where maybe it would never be developed.
The valve manifold, the riser for it will actually be in the buffer zone adjacent to an electrical vault that we have there right now. So it'll be in a dog cage and it'll be protected. So it's in a good spot for a permanent solution.
All right, any other questions for Matt?
I had a quick comment and then.
Oh, sorry.
Can we do it?
Go ahead.
We already.
I haven't opened it up to the public yet.
Okay. My only other comment on that, just to go back to that grass strip, I'm thinking about timing. I think they're not going to landscape actually the roundabout area until the fall to let the temperatures get cooler and let the shrubs. So maybe we just don't worry about that now and hydroseed it, treat it like the temporary condition that's on the landing site. So.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Any further questions? Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this item?
Sure.
Christian.
Hi, Christian Henney, Hotel Colorado, 526 Pine Street. I would just like to ask that you please move forward with this so we get rid of the dust bowl across the street and give it some sense of place. And even though I know it's temporary or as further plans are developed, but it would certainly add to the guest experience of our travelers coming to town. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in regard to this item? All right, seeing none, I will close it to public comment and bring it back to council for discussion and or a motion. Shelley?
I'll make a motion. I move to accept the bid for the hydroseeding and irrigation of the North Landing site in an amount not to exceed $10,000. And that is from Sprinkler Professionals. Do I need that in there?
That's fine.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion by Shelley. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Shelley and a second by Jim to approve the proposal by Sprinkler Professionals LLC for hydroseeding and irrigation of the North Landing site for an amount not to exceed $10,000. Any further discussion? Let's call the question.
Oh.
Abstain.
Push the wrong button.
Okay. Ingram, yes. Godus, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kelp, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Next item is our Glen Springs Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or CAFR, I guess is the acronym for it. We have a presentation by Yvette.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Our auditors have completed their annual report. This year we did a more comprehensive, as you said, CAFR report, which gives a lot more statistical and a lot more history in the report. I do have hard copies if any of you would like them.
I get 3.
Can you get 3? Sure. I will bring them up in just a moment, but I want to introduce our auditors from McMahon and Associates. Paul Bacchus and Matthew Miller are here to give the presentation. So if you'd like one, just let me know.
You definitely want one. Thank you. Unfortunately for Mayor Gamba, this is the second time this week. I was at the RAFTA meeting too. So, as Yvette mentioned, my name's Paul Bacchus. I'm a CPA with a firm called McMahon Associates, and as Carl can attest to, we do a lot of governments. Included in that is the City of Glenwood Springs. In the past, your motion to accept the audited financial statements have always been referred to as a general purpose financial statement. So essentially municipal governments, or pretty much all governments, do one of 2 types of financial statements. One is general purpose financial statements, and this is a comprehensive annual financial report. So the main question is, what's the difference? The financial section in this CAFR is pretty much what you've had in the past. Your staff prepared 2 additional items. One is called letter of transmittal, and the second is called the statistical section. And the statistical section has a lot of information in it that is useful to a financial statement user, things like population, employers, property tax base, debt service coverage ratios, things like that. Generally, the larger an entity gets, the more likely they are to produce a CAFR. The other kind of benefit of producing a CAFR is one of the main uses of financial statements is all your bondholders. And so every time you issue debt or refund debt, your finance staff has to put together all these statistics anyways. And so I think at this point, it certainly makes sense for the city of Glenwood to actually produce the full CAFR. Just a quick overview of kind of what we do when we help produce your audited financial statements. So we come out first before year end, and we'll spend time with each department head trying to understand your internal control system, who takes money in, how is it processed, who pays money out, how is it processed. And we'll do things like read all your minutes, go through all your ordinances, all your legal agreements, things like that. Then we come back after year end, and we're actually verifying the numbers. So I don't know that any of you actually made it up to our little corner when we're auditing there, but it's essentially 4 CPAs right outside of Ed's office. And we are doing things like verifying the cash and investment balances you have. So if your financial statements say you have $300,000 in a bank account, we want to know what's in the bank, confirm that balance with the bank. We want to see bank reconciliations throughout the year. We want to make sure it's covered by FDIC insurance or Public Deposit Protection Act. But ultimately the goal is, if your financial statements say you have $341,000 in your conservation trust fund, we want to know that that's in the bank. We'll go through all your receivables, whether it's sales tax receivables, property tax receivables, utility receivables. We want to make sure when a check comes in or wire transfer, it gets coded correctly, it gets deposited timely, and we're following up on anyone that hasn't paid their utility bills. And we have the correct allowance for doubtful accounts. If you have an ambulance billing or something like that, we want to make sure that we have a correct write-off percentage. We'll go through all your fixed assets. When you purchase a fixed asset like a pickup truck, we want to make sure that gets added. We'll pull that off the minutes, look at the invoice, make sure it's depreciated correctly, make sure it gets added to your software, and it gets added to your insurance listing so that we know that all your assets are covered by insurance and accounted for correctly. We spend a lot of time going through payments that the city makes. If you make a payment, it needs to be budgeted for, paid timely, no interest, late fees, things like that, and it gets coded correctly so that when you look at your financial statements, we know that repair and maintenance is repair and maintenance and not payroll or something else. We'll reconcile what you've reported on your payroll to the IRS back to what your financial statements show. Make sure you've filed all the correct payroll forms and that you're following your personnel manual policies as far as what do employees earn for vacation, what are they paid, things like that. And then we'll go through all your debt. When you issued debt, there was a giant stack of papers somebody signed, and they had a lot of promises in it. Do we have a reserve fund? Do we have certain debt service coverage ratios? And do we report our information to our bondholders correctly? So we'll verify all that. Then we put together our section of the report. We get the rest of the data from your staff, and ultimately this report's going to go to all your bondholders through the SEC. It's going to go to the federal government as a condition of receiving grants, a fair number of state departments as a condition of receiving state grants, public health environment as a condition of operating a landfill, and then Colorado State Auditor. And then obviously there'll be a copy available for your electorate that'll go on your website. The two primary changes that you would find in this report this year is it does include those 2 additional sections that make it a comprehensive annual financial report. And it also includes a single audit section, which actually is somewhat unusual for municipalities to have, but this last year you received enough federal dollars to where you actually had to have an additional section in the report that addresses those federal grants. And then all that gets transmitted as necessary, assuming it's accepted tonight. I'm happy to go into detail on, kind of on the financial results. Honestly, I kind of expected maybe more of a decline in fund balances as a result of the bridge project, which I'm sure everyone enjoyed, including myself. But really, the financial results were I thought, much better than maybe what I had anticipated walking in. You ended the year effectively across all your governmental funds adding $135,000, which, on $22 million of fund balances in the governmental funds is pretty much break even. I think when I look through your fund balances, they seem reasonable, prudent fund balances for a municipality of your size. And the numbers effectively turned out to be what you would have anticipated both in your budget process and in your interim reporting that through your financial staff. So I'm probably not going to go into that unless you want me to. I do have to provide an introduction to Matt. He's going to go through a letter that we have that has some recommendations and other items that we have to communicate to you as independent auditors. But I do have to say, your staff has done an incredible job to get to the point where they could produce a CAFR while going through the process of updating your software, which is no small task. When I would drive by, I would kind of always see the Yvette's office light on. I'm like, oh, it's 8 o'clock at night, there she is. And I think a lot of that stuff happens kind of behind the scenes, which is kind of how you want your finance staff to operate. But there's a lot of work that goes into it to produce correct audited financial statements. And I just, I think that needs to be acknowledged, especially this year, getting a CAFR done, well looking through and starting the process of changing software is no small task. So I'd be happy to introduce Matt, and he can walk you through our recommendations in the letter if you'd like, or I can answer any questions on the financial statements.
Anyone have any questions at this point?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So this is kind of a several-part letter. It's basically our report to you, kind of about how things went, some other factors that are involved with the audit, and then any recommendations that we have for you. So the first section of this letter kind of says that there's no new accounting policies this year. So your accounting policies are consistent year over year, but that will change next year, which you'll see later in this letter. It discusses the 3 main estimates that are in your financial statements. So the first one is the useful lives on your fixed assets. So that's kind of just based on industry practice. That's what you use to calculate depreciation expense. So we just try to make sure that those are kind of within reason. The second one is estimating allowance for uncollectible receivables. And then the last one is the liability for your pension. And that relates to the fireman and police pension, which is also going to be covered in a little bit. Let's see, as far as difficulties encountered with the audit, there was none. We made no material adjustments to your financial statements, which kind of goes back to the quality that your finance staff provides. So the interim information that you get from them is accurate. Let's see, we had no disagreements with management, which is always a good thing. And then kind of back to the FPPA standards, Governmental Accounting Standard 75 is going to be effective for your fiscal year 2018. And essentially that will add an additional liability to your balance sheet for the statewide death and disability fund, which you guys are a participant in. So we will obviously handle that next year as that comes. And then as far as recommendations go, we have 3 kind of recommendations for the city. And these relate to internal controls in general. So the first one is for the payroll function, and kind of a general internal control is that you don't want anyone to have access to a full transaction cycle. So I shouldn't be able to create an employee, process payroll, upload that information, and that's kind of it. I'm the only person in charge there. And so what was going on in payroll that is within the software, the payroll person had access to basically do everything. She could create, adjust pay rates, things like that. While that wasn't the city's practice, Human Resources does set them up. The ability for changes to be made is there. And so that was actually removed from the payroll software January 30th, pretty much when we would discuss it with the vet. The second one relates to the landfill. So currently they don't accept credit cards out there. And it sounds like a lot of people want to pay with credit cards. They run into situations where somebody comes in, they don't have cash or a check. So, now they've already dropped off their stuff. So the expectation is you're going to come back. And so it just to kind of tighten up controls there. If they had the ability to have credit cards, you know, that would help them out from that standpoint, and it reduces the amount of cash that they would collect, which less cash is always a good thing. And then the last kind of recommendation that we have is with the Community Development Department. And so as far as that goes, they're essentially processing payments at times before they create the permit within the software. And they tend to be credit card payments because someone's coming in and they want to pay now, even though the permit hasn't been set up. And essentially what this creates is a situation where I've taken a payment through credit card, it's going to hit the bank statement tomorrow, and when somebody from finance goes to reconcile the bank account, it doesn't agree to their financial software because nothing's been set up in the financial software for that. And so it just creates a reconciliation headache where people are, you know, going back, digging through things. It does span months at times where I took a payment towards the end of a month, but I set the permit up at the beginning of the next month. So our recommendation for this is to have the finance department kind of work with the community development department to come up with a process that works for them both, so that, you know, your customer's still being taken care of, somebody's not getting turned away, they're not being delayed, but finance staff is not kind of going through the headache of going back and trying to reconcile. So those are the three things that we have for you as far as the board communication letter goes. Is there any questions on that?
I've got one question.
Sure.
Yeah, you used the term, I think you said there were no material adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a sense of, when you say material, what that means sort of from a size or quantitative perspective, and also maybe if there's a qualitative aspect of that determination of what's material?
So materiality is kind of a complex calculation, but it's based on each fund. So it would depend on, dollar-wise, depends on which fund it's on, or if it's on like a government-wide level. It could range from very small, you know, around a couple $1,000s to a little higher in the general fund being, you know, maybe more like $20,000. It just is it's a varying number, and it changes year over year. It just depends on revenue, assets that you're holding in those funds. So it goes back and forth, but in general, you know, the adjustments were very limited, if any. So
I'll just add, it's a mathematical calculation too.
Yes.
That would be consistent across any audit. And there is some qualitative factors that we take into account. We don't accept any variance like on cash, accounts receivable, accounts payable, because those are actual dollars changing hands. If you miscalculated depreciation, that would be, we'd probably look at true materiality there, because it may be we have a little more expense for an asset in 1 year versus another year. That's not true dollars changing hands, so that would be kind of the qualitative part of it.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. It's actually not for you, it's for our staff. What would it take for us to be able to take credit cards out at the landfill?
I believe we're already working on it.
Okay.
Eric, I think it's really an internet issue. And Eric was out, I think, 2 days this week, kind of tromping around trying to figure it out.
Okay.
And the community development issue with finance, we're also already working on.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions for our auditors?
Yeah, we're aware that there's no real system of benchmarking or available data from municipalities, maybe across the United States, by which you could make comparisons from Glenwood to Carbondale to Washington, D.C., but you may not, you know, work in those areas, but I'm just kind of curious how you believe that this stacks up compared to other municipalities. I understand no material findings, which I think is a tribute to our staff. Thank you very much. But in the work that you do, there is no benchmarking, so how would you compare our status?
Take that. So I think we audit almost every member of CAST. And part of it depends on what you're trying to compare. You know, are you trying to compare debt load? Are you trying to compare debt per citizen, or you're trying to compare sales tax. So it gets really hard to kind of compare municipality to municipality. I find the cast members to be pretty consistent in kind of their revenue streams, and if you looked, other than maybe like Winter Park was a little later than all the other entities, but Carbondale has been kind of going up valley here, certainly down valley with Avon, Vale, so forth. It seems like you see the same trends, economic trends. When sales tax increases at one, you tend to see it across the board. The state auditor does do some analytical comparisons off the audited financial statements, and what they're specifically looking for is if you kind of fail a certain number of metrics that they look at, they actually do send governing boards a letter saying, hey, we've noticed your fund balance has declined 3 years in a row and you're below some threshold, something like that. So I know I'm not necessarily answering your question, but you do have that in play. The other thing is even though our responsibility is to make sure the audit financial statements are correct, we do look at your ending fund balances, certainly for the primary funds, as a percentage of expenditures, trying to make sure that you don't fall below a certain threshold. Because, like if you're looking at a property tax dependent entity, you're not going to collect anything for 3 months. So you have to pretty much have a 25% reserve just to operate. If you're sales tax dependent, it may be less, but you tend to have bigger swings in revenue streams. If you go back and look at, why is a school district and a library district and a fire district funded by property taxes? Because they used to be really stable until 2008. Municipalities tend to be funded in counties more by sales tax, because as you have more economic development, you tend to have more expenses. So when I look at Glenwood's financial statements, I think you guys have perfectly reasonable, prudent fund balances. What's hard is you can run through them really quick depending on what's coming down the line next year on capital, and that's what we don't look at. There isn't kind of a nationwide metric other than kind of bond analysts. I don't recall what your rating is, which tells me it's pretty much the same as the rest of CAST and other municipalities. I don't know. That's a lengthy non-answer.
Well avoided.
Yeah, well avoided. Thank you.
So do you have any observations about our reserve proportion of our budget? Are we doing well there? Just from your knowledge of the field.
Well, if you actually looked on page B6 of our report, sorry, B5 of our report, you could see all your fund balances going back to 2008. To me, you have reasonable fund balances. It's, again, hard for me to say, looking forward, what you're going to spend them on. What I tend to look for is, are you below amount where you could have a liquidity issue? So I tend to look at the bare minimum that you should have. And you've seen that, it's been a number of years, but one of the Front Range school districts effectively ran out of cash throughout the middle of the year, and the state had to step in and fund them. And I just kind of look at that and think, oh, I don't ever want that to happen to one of my clients. So beyond kind of just telling you, I think your fund balances are reasonable, prudent fund balances, with the caveat that you can run through them pretty quick with some of the capital projects that I'm sure you guys have anticipated. So,
thank you.
I avoided that one too, didn't I? Sorry, there just isn't a kind of plug and play number.
Well, one thing you did say is percentage of revenue and 3 years of declining fund balance, and it looks like we are fiddling with that. If we decline again in 2018, our high water mark was 15, then we decrease in 16 and 17. I'm just looking at the bar chart on page B5. How much pause, and understanding our fund balances are still good, but what does that say to you as an auditor, that if we come in with a declining fund balance again in 2018, is that yellow flag, orange, red, or
Well,
no problem at all?
I'd look at C5 actually, tends to be kind of the first page I go to when I look at a government's financial statements. And so you'll see all your funds there. And it's important to note there are different analysis in this report. Some of them are modified accrual, which is like a cash basis, like you guys do your budget, how much do we have in the bank? And other parts are full accrual, like a business would keep their records. So just kind of be cautious of that when you look at your financial statements, which section you're looking at. But B5 is how governmental funds, how you do your budget. You'll see, revenue comes in at the top, expense goes out, but that third line from the bottom shows your change in fund balances. So you added 158,000 to your general fund. You started the year with 6.8 million. You ended the year with 6.9. We'll call it round up to 7 million. You spent 14.5 million last year out of the general fund, so you have a 50% reserve. So, you would pretty much never want to, I think, go below a 30% reserve. I mean, that's pretty typical what I would see for an entity your size. It may be a little higher depending on honestly, I'd probably defer to your finance staff as far as you'd want to go a step further and analyze what was your drop in sales tax kind of going back to 2008 and so forth. But if you slide over, you'll see 7 million out of 14 million is the general fund. Across all your governmental funds, you have 22 million out of 31 million. Those strike me as kind of reasonable, prudent reserves. Generally, however, the general fund is going to determine pretty much your fiscal health, along with your enterprise funds. That's going to determine Glenwood's fiscal health. But a 50% reserve is pretty typical for what you'd see. It's pretty rare to see them below, 35%. And sometimes they're up around 100%, depending on if you're accumulating resources to do something, or smaller entities tend to have to carry higher balances. Also, if you get a lot of real estate transfer tax funding versus property tax, kind of the mix of revenues makes a difference too. So honestly, that's probably a question better addressed by Yvette and Steve and your finance team.
Nice non-answer again.
I'm sorry. I really don't try.
No, that was actually helpful. Thank you.
There's just a lot of factors, and you have to kind of sit down client by client and go through what's the revenue stream, how variable is it, what do you have anticipated going forward, and then what do you need just as an operating reserve to get through the year. So, but don't ask them to do that until after the software is converted.
Any other questions for Paul? No? Yes?
I just wanted to say thank you to Steve and Yvette for doing all the work, and Steve for thinking we should do all this work.
And then for taking all the credit.
Yes. One day we'll have all those little plaques up on for budget awards and CAFR awards.
They got cheap now. They only give you one plaque and a sticker. So, anyways.
Yeah, I would like to second that compliment to Yvette and Steve for getting this done and working all the hours necessary to get it done, and we appreciate that.
So as Deborah mentioned, this actually will be submitted to the Government Finance Officers Association, and so it'll go out of state. I don't remember who reviews Colorado. We have a CPA in our firm that reviews Texas, so it'll be out of state. And they'll review it to make sure that you have all adequate disclosures, you have the correct format, you've followed generally accepted accounting principles, things like that. Usually it takes 1 or 2 years to get it. They'll send a letter back saying, hey, here are concerns we had on the reporting. And you'll either hopefully get an award this year. If you don't this year, we'll definitely make sure you get one next year. So, and that usually takes about 6 months. It's kind of similar to maybe what a bond analyst would do and kind of looking through. So we'll see what they respond on on comments when you get it back.
Can we get a word before we get off council?
You got 8 months, 30 days, and
it'll be close.
Pretty much right.
The only one we got.
It'll be close.
All right.
And so normally there's a motion to accept, and then we get it filed with everybody that needs it, and you guys can put 2017 behind you.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, but our staff report says, staff recommendation not applicable. So I was thinking that we normally do accept it by motion. So is there any reason we can't do that? No. Okay, so I would entertain, do we need to take public comment on our audit? Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on this CAFR? No. All right. I would entertain a motion to accept our comprehensive annual financial report.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Todd and a second by Rick to accept our comprehensive annual financial report for 2017. Any further discussion? Let's go ahead and call the vote. Club condos temporary easement.
I could do some of the math, got out, so. Deborah's not allowed to give people time off again. So 27th Street Bridge project, the last, I believe, portion of the project that requires right-of-way acquisition or an easement acquisition is the Racket Club Association. There is a temporary easement that was required on the Racket Club's property for construction of the project. It is not a permanent easement, it's a temporary easement. And the Racket Club wanted some more guarantees that if anything happens to their property or their lift station or their sewer line above and beyond what's within the specifications that hold the contractor liable for repairing any damage outside of the project boundary, which these facilities actually are outside the project boundary. So they have requested that the city provide them an agreement that covers them again for any damages outside of the temporary easement. So that is what is in front of you, is a legal agreement that the city will cover damages that occur to their property outside of the temporary easement or to any of their facilities, above and beyond what the contractor, if the contractor was to leave the site inadequately repaired.
To follow up on that, this will be transferred through to our contractor on the project. Just as an HOA, they were extraordinarily concerned about something happening to their lift station since they're dependent on it. Obviously, if it doesn't lift, they don't flush. So that really is the heart of it, is just, and in terms of either doing this or, it's kind of cool with the screen going up and down.
Excuse the ghosts.
It was either doing this or probably take the next step of filing for immediate possession of the temporary easement and going through that process. And this is not really providing anything that isn't already provided in the contract documents, but if it provides them some comfort, then I'm okay with it.
What kind of protection, because I know that we're transferring our liability here, sorry.
That's okay.
To the contractor, but what kind of protection are we putting in this agreement for an unreasonable claim by the property owner? In other words, their 30-year-old sewer pump burns out and they blame it on the construction of the project.
That was exactly where I was headed as well.
Right.
You know, the vibration from the D9 caused it to. It's been really problematic lift station over the years anyway.
Right. The language we use that it's during the use and occupancy of the temporary easement, city's use and occupancy, or its contractor's use of occupancy of the temporary easement. Frankly, I'll just say no and we'll argue over it. factually if it's clearly not as a result of something we did. It's not a carte blanche. It has to be related to our construction activities.
Yeah, there should be some evidence that.
Okay.
I agree, because this is not a capital fund for replacing the lift station because it's old.
Right. That's the only thought that I had on this also, so.
Yeah, I've personally witnessed that type of thing many times.
Yeah. So, like I said, we are, one, we're going to pass along this obligation, obviously roll it into the contract for whoever our contractor is. And two, we're going to have on-site monitoring pretty much the whole time with independent inspection services during the course of this project. So I think we're going to be able to factually confirm if there is some issue or not.
Okay. Any further questions for Matt or Carl? All right. We are looking for a motion to approve enter into the agreement. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, I will close it to the public and bring it back to council for a motion.
I move to approve entering into agreement with the Racket Club condos for the protection of their lift station during the 27th Street Bridge Replacement Project.
I second that
There's a
motion.
motion by Jonathan and a second by Shelley to enter into an agreement with the Racket Club Condominium Association to protect their lift station during the 27th Street Bridge Replacement Project. Any further discussion? Let's call the question.
Ingram, yes. Otis, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kelp, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Now we're moving on to 27th Street Bridge construction funding.
Council, I'm just going to stand up here and just keep talking.
All right.
Jessica put me in charge of this one. Basically what we're looking for with this, as you've read through the staff report, is that CDOT will not let us move forward with the bidding process for the 27th Street Bridge until the city has agreed to fund the project. They're not asking us to decide where the funding is coming from, whether it's a bond, A&I, or whatever. They're just asking for the city council to agree that they will fund the project so that it can go out to bid.
Matt? Yep. Why do we have to get CDOT's permission to build a bridge in our street and our city limits?
We're getting money from them.
Oh, never mind.
Basically, they are helping fund the project.
Thanks.
So all of the specifications, the drawings, everything are being designed for CDOT to help us fund the project.
Good answer. Thank you, Mayor.
You will see in your packet that the staff report was updated a little bit. We had a cost estimate come in yesterday that updated the cost estimate from $7.9 to $8.3 million. That was basically, as we had the work session this morning, due to concerns about mobilization with the shortened time frame from the consultants. So your packet's updated from 7.9 million for construction to 8.3 and a approximate deficit of $7.4 million. So it's about a $400,000 increase from the staff packet that's in the agenda.
Assuming we authorize this, when will this go to bid?
Is anticipated to go to bid in August.
And how long are bids going to be open?
They are going to run them as short as humanly possible, so 4 to 5 weeks. Most of the contractors that are going to bid on this are already looking at these plans. They are up on the website. So we're anticipating the shorter time frame will be acceptable. Once you say you're going to fund it, we'll let everybody know that so they can really start digging into the plans to hopefully shorten the time frame and get some good bids in on this.
And I believe we have some leeway if, it's only 10% above our engineering estimates. So if it comes back, double our engineering estimates, which we're not anticipating, we're not promising to fund it at that level, correct?
Correct.
All right. Any other questions for staff? Shelley?
I just had a question on, somewhere I've written in my notes, we have the 8.3 and then it said 2.566 in grants.
Mm-hmm.
But if I just add up, the DOLA and the FMLD, that's about 1.45. Where's the rest of
The funding from the state, the reason we have to follow this procedure.
That's the CDOT grants? Okay.
It's a CML grant, but I believe the money flows from CDOT.
Okay.
And I think we have an opportunity to go back and ask them for more money. We're also going to ask the county for funding.
Right.
And then we're also going to have our utilities contribute a little bit because our utilities are going to run over the new Ped Bridge. We haven't
Okay.
fully determined that amount, but.
Okay, and, right, I didn't see any county funding in there, but hopefully they will be a partner in this.
There's
We
a
will
half a
ask.
million in FMLD right now,
Okay.
funding
Right, from FMLD.
from FMLD.
Yeah. Great.
And we have no, with the county, we have no, are we having discussions with them, or are we?
We have a works, I think Mike, I sent you an email. I think we are tentatively on their schedule for August 6th for an ask. I'm kind of trying to see where we are with our data set to make sure we're ready to go. But they know we're coming to ask.
Yeah, the preliminary informal discussions with some of the commissioners has indicated that there is a reluctance to just accept kind of a percentage of county traffic over this bridge that is kind of picked out of the air. They would like to see some corroborating evidence for that, and I think Terry has been working on that with, who's our consultant on that? Is it?
I honestly don't remember.
Yeah, I
I'm
can't
sorry.
remember. I think it's our 8th Street designer, isn't it?
The cell phone data.
Jacobs is the main person on that, but they have a sub-consultant that's doing the cell phone data that you had approved I believe the gold level package previously a couple months ago.
Any idea where we are on that?
I do not have an update on that one.
I have a question into Terry for when she gets back.
Okay.
Great.
Great. You wanted to say something?
So you don't feel like by our committing to fund it this way that this kind of leaves the county in a position where why would they offer any assistance?
The county has never commingled FMLD grants with county money.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's something they are proud of. So I don't know if we ever had a good likelihood of getting money, but we need to ask.
Well, I live in the county. I'd like to think that.
We
that
do all live in
counts
the
for
county.
something.
I have a quick question with regards to a motion, because Matt, you just mentioned a 10% flexibility in the overall bid of, and then in our packet here, it says if the contractors respond to the invitation to bid with costs significantly higher than the estimate, the city or CDOT could elect not to move forward with the project. Is 10% the significantly higher number, or is it just, because I have a little bit of angst about reading a motion that says without a defined budget or funding source as the ending of that. That seems very, very open-ended. It'd be nice if there's a 10% threshold in this number to say that in the motion, or if the word is significantly higher to say that in the motion.
I guess my suggestion would be to say significantly higher.
Okay.
And then that is up to us.
Exactly.
Okay.
I kind of prefer that myself, because otherwise we're just broadcasting to the world that, yeah, go ahead and charge us an extra 10% and we'll pay it anyway. Or 9.9%.
Right, no, I would agree, and significantly maybe in the context of our larger budget, it could be.
As far as I'm concerned, significantly is negative 10%, but that's my
Right,
own opinion.
well, no, and that's, I mean, that's a fair point, is that I think it is, that's why I like the flexibility of the word significant versus a percentage.
Okay. All right, any other questions before I open up for public comment? Okay. Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for a motion. Todd?
So I'd like to go ahead and make a motion here, and I would move to commit to fund the 27th Street Bridge construction and construction management without a defined budget or funding source, but with the caveat that if the contractors respond to the invitation to bid with costs significantly higher than the estimate, the city or CDOT could elect not to move forward with the project at that time.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Todd and a second by Jonathan to commit to funding the 27th Street Bridge construction and construction management project without a defined budget or funding source, and with the caveat that if the bids returned are deemed significantly higher, we or CDOT have the right to, or the opportunity to not fund the project. Is that a fair restatement?
Correct.
Okay. Any further discussion? Let's call the question.
Ingram, yes. Godus, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kelp, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Moving on, we have a continuation of a second reading on ordinance number 14, series of 2018. An ordinance of the City of Glen Springs, Colorado, repealing and replacing Article 010.050 and amending Section 010.040.010 of the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code. This is related to the changes we have been discussing for our procurement code.
Yep, that's right. On July 5th, there was the original second reading of the ordinance. And it came up that sometimes you guys are walking around town or whatever and you see something happening, a little construction project or something, and you don't necessarily know what's going on. Currently, we put on the consent agenda all of our bid awards, anything that's a sole source or anything that's an emergency procurement. And what we originally brought forward did not include those things being on the consent agenda. So you guys asked us to go back and fix that. So we did, and as we kind of thought through it, we're taking most of our procurement code out of code and into an internal procedure. So we will include in that internal procedure that you guys continue to see those things on the consent agenda. If you read this new ordinance, the only thing that's different is that Carl thought that you guys would probably prefer to see the internal document and pass it as a resolution. So we'll actually bring that document forward to you guys. You can kind of look through it, pass it as a resolution, and then we'll post it publicly. That's the only difference, though.
All right, any questions for Steve or Carl or anyone else?
I had a question, and make sure I'm looking at the right. This is for ordinance 14, correct?
Right.
Okay. And I thought one of the things that we were interested in talking about too was kind of revisiting those levels of expenditures for funds without the council oversight. Was there other interest in that? I thought that was one of the things that was mentioned.
And I think you're right, but my recollection was we were getting kind of two things confused. One was unbudgeted expenditures and the other was budgeted expenditures.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We did have that conversation, and I think everybody was a little bit uncomfortable because there was, that misconception of budgeted versus unbudgeted. Everything we're talking about here is budgeted dollars. Anything that we spend that's not budgeted comes back to you guys as a reappropriation. So these limits are only relevant to things that you guys have actually passed in the annual budget.
Okay, except on A, does it say, we are changing the limit to, it says shall approve all unbudgeted entered into by the city involving the commitment of expenditure of funds in excess of 100,000, and it used to be 10,000?
Right.
Is that right?
Right.
And I was just wondering on that $100,000 limit that, me personally, if I look at inflation since 1975 or so, that would put us more in like a $50,000 limit on that.
Yeah, I've done that math too, and I come out at around $80,000 or so, something like that. The numbers that you guys are looking at, I think are comparatively fairly low against other organizations of our size. As procurement and contracts manager at CMC, their annual budget is about the same, and to kind of put it in perspective, my signing authority, just myself as procurement manager, was $100,000 there. With the COO, we could approve up to $250,000, and with the president up to $1 million. And, you know, that's, I wouldn't say it's standard or consistent, but that's not unusual. So our numbers really are still pretty low.
Again, those are only budgeted numbers.
Absolutely. And anything that we take out to bid, you guys are also, you know, able to see those bids, and then you'll actually approve it on the consent agenda.
And I'm okay with that on budgeted, but as I read A, it says unbudgeted.
Well, it says the city council shall approve all unbudgeted legal instruments entered into by the city and all budgeted legal instruments involving the commitments or expenditure of funds in excess of 100,000. So basically, if it's unbudgeted and it's a penny, we got to approve it.
Absolutely. That's right.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Just one quick question. I'm wondering what it means when we talk about the approval of legal instruments. I understand approved by the city manager and approved as to form by the city attorney. So what does as to form mean?
It means I reviewed it for legal sufficiency. The form of the document, it's not just formatting, it's I go through it, and sometimes it's that, you know, the city is referred to appropriately, the venue clause is right, all kinds of things that put everybody else to sleep.
So you probably have a handy-dandy little Word template for this then? Or?
It depends on whether or not I'm crafting the contract or not. We use and have for years, actually. You guys are still using standardized contracts that I drafted when I was in-house 15 years ago, by and large. So we've gotten pretty good mileage out of them, honestly, because we don't create them new each time. But there are typically 3 or 4 provisions that we review for sufficiency on new contracts. And then also typically the bond documents I like to take a look at, because sometimes you'll just get a date that's wrong and it could affect whether or not that bond is effective as to the contract that's being issued.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Any other questions? Great. Thanks, Steve. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for a motion.
I move we pass ordinance 14A as written and direct staff to disclose the awards of all bids, emergency procurement, sole source. The right thing? Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. Sole source procurements on the consent agenda of the regular council meetings immediately following its award, or, that's why I motion.
I second the motion.
All right, we have a motion by Jonathan and a second by Shelley to pass ordinance 14 as written and direct staff to disclose the award of all bids, emergency procurements, and sole source procurements on the consent agenda of the regular council meeting immediately following its award. Any further discussion? Let's call the question.
Ingram, yes. Godus, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kalp, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item 24, which is ordinance number 19, series of 2018, repealing and replacing Title 070 of the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code and amending other sections of the Municipal Code that reference Title 070. I've only been working on this for about 2.5 years, so.
Okay. We are nearing the end of our 2.5-year-long journey to redraft the city's development code. Matt Goebel and Tarek Wafai of Claring and Associates, who helped us through this entire process, will provide you with a summary of the new code, focusing on the many improvements that have been made and on the major changes. Before I turn this over to them, though, I want to thank Tarek and Matt for providing their expert advice, like I said, throughout this entire process. I also want to thank the members of the project advisory group and city staff and the general public for their countless hours that they put into reviewing and commenting on the many iterations of the code. So I believe that this is the best document that it can be, but nothing is perfect. I am sure that once we put the code into practice, we will be back before you with various requests for amendments, revisions, and clarifications. So right now, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Matt, okay? And for their presentation, after which then we will take any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Gretchen. Mayor, council members, good to see you again. We have a brief presentation to remind you of the key parts of the project, but you all have been really supportive and engaged in this process throughout the entire 2 years, 2+ years, and so we don't need to do a big refresher because you've been at the table, and I just really wanted to say up front, thank you very much. We don't always get that support at the council level, that level of interest that we've had, so it's really, I think, contributed to a stronger product. We've enjoyed this project. We've gotten great feedback from the public, meaningful feedback. We've gotten good feedback and developed a strong partnership with your staff as well, so I think that's really all resulted in a code that we are very proud of and a process that I think we're all very proud of. So we just thank you again because we've enjoyed the opportunity. Tarek and I are going to run through a quick reminder for you of things that we've covered, the process, but also the substance in the code. We're going to hit in particular a few things that have changed since the consolidated draft, which was the last time we were here in front of you. And then we've got plenty of time for Q&A and discussions. Just briefly, I wanted to remind you about the process that we've been through. As the mayor said, we kicked this off a while back. We went through an exhaustive or a lengthy process of interviews with folks in the community about what is working well and what can be improved with land development and zoning issues in Glenwood. And we summarized all of that feedback and our analysis in that assessment report that was done back in 2015, which really laid the groundwork for all the drafting we've been doing. We then drafted the code in 3 steps. You've been with us along the way. We divided the drafting into 3 kind of thematic modules: administration and zoning districts and land uses and development standards. That's the themes that Tarek and I are going to use to divide our presentation tonight. Then we came back in the spring of this year and we put everything together, consolidated draft code, which reflected edits that we heard from the community and from you all on all those pieces. And now we're back here at the final stage, the adoption draft. So this document has again been revised based on all the feedback that we got from you all. And all of that is summarized in the agenda packet that Gretchen put together for the meeting tonight. So that's where we are. We wanted to remind you also briefly that there are some supporting materials out there that will ensure effective implementation of the code. Your staff has been working hard on these things. The fee schedules, for example, they've been rethinking the numbers, of what you need to be charging for the different types of applications. All this stuff that we were able to remove from the code, but it does still need to be updated as separate manuals. Similarly, checklists, for the different types of applications. Those have all been put together. A lot of the detailed engineering standards have been pulled out. You've been working on a separate project to update all those as a standalone manual, so that's going to be an important tool to implement the code. And then finally, the map. The zoning map has been updated as you've been talking about with staff, and that will continue to be adjusted in the coming months as additional work is done with that mapping process. So all those tools are going to be important to ensure that the work that we've done here with the code is as effective as possible. So with that, let's jump into the summary, the things that we really wanted to highlight for you in the adoption draft. And I'm going to take the first piece, and then Tarek's going to take the last 2 topics. Again, just wanted to remind you about the assessment report. This was the high-level discussion of the things that could be improved. This is what you really all agreed on were the key goals for the project. Streamline the development review procedures. We heard that you're doing too many variances, for example, and we heard that there's too much detail required early on in different project applications. So that was an important goal that we listed right up front, because that was what we heard the most feedback on. Fine-tune the zoning districts and the land uses as well. Consolidate and upgrade the development and design standards, and then make sure the overall document is user-friendly, easy to use. So these are the things that we've done. Tarek and I are just going to hit the first 3 topics there, but you're going to see evidence of the user-friendliness of the code throughout all of these slides. So let's just jump in. This is the organization of the code that was suggested, and only thing I wanted to highlight on this is that The historic preservation piece hasn't gotten a lot of discussion in these meetings, but it's been updated with targeted updates prepared by your staff. That's all been folded in. You've seen all that separately. Several other things that you all have been working on independently have been folded into this organization, like the wireless ordinance that you talked about earlier tonight that's been folded into this draft. So this really is a good uniform foundation for a lot of the different things that you've been working on. So let's talk about the first topic, streamline the development review procedures. This is what you all really wanted to make a highlight of this effort. And a few things that I wanted to highlight that are new to Glenwood in this project are a few things. There's a summary table that clarifies who does what, clarifies the review responsibilities, because we did hear from a lot of the stakeholders that there was some confusion about who made which decisions for which types of projects, so that's helpful. There's a set of common review procedures that it sounds dull to describe, but it's actually saving you a lot of space, and we're eliminating a lot of redundant language by clarifying just one time what the basic steps are for project review. We're going to talk about site and architectural plan review. We've significantly updated those, and you all have been along the way talking about the thresholds for those reviews. And then we've introduced additional new procedures like an optional master plan, optional construction plans, and administrative adjustments. I'm going to cover each one of these here. First of all, just wanted to remind you about this table. The table up front is kind of a one-stop shop for key information about all the different types of applications for zoning or development in Glenwood Springs. Everything from a rezoning, which is amending the zoning map, to amending the text of the code itself, to various flavors of development permits, site architectural plans, etc. This is all here. You've got 3 flavors of site and architectural plan, which we'll talk about. Those have been continually updated and refined throughout the whole process. The optional master plan is new. That is an optional tool for a large site, say a redevelopment of a shopping center, something like that, where an applicant could come in and get the council to bless an overall concept, and then subsequent applications on that site would be administrative. Other things I wanted to highlight here are the administrative adjustment. That's a new flexibility and relief tool that would be considered by a decision maker along with another application. So right now you're doing a lot of variances. And the goal here is that with this new administrative adjustment tool, you've got the ability to approve small deviations from code standards without having to go through a full variance process. I mentioned the common review procedures. They're summarized by this graphic up here. We've got a tailored version of this graphic for all the 20+ different application types. It's a good one-stop shop for somebody who is just becoming familiar with the code just for a project to see at a glance kind of which elements of the staff review process or the decision maker would apply to their particular type of application. A few things that we wanted to highlight that are changed since the consolidated draft. The thresholds for site plans. Y'all have talked about this quite a bit, so this is not new, but we have now in this new draft clarified your most recent thinking. The thresholds for development, administrative site plans, site architectural plans, 1 through 8 dwelling units, that's up from 1 to 3. 9 to 24 are planning commission approval, and that's gone up as well from 4 to 10. We've adjusted the thresholds for non-residential and mixed use as well. Those have gone up from 20,000 to 30,000 square feet where they go to the planning commission level. So all the things that you all talked about in some of your work sessions have been folded into the draft. I don't need to go through all that text, but we've incorporated all that material here. And importantly at the bottom there, that administrative adjustment threshold has gone up. It was 10% in prior drafts, and it's been raised to 15% in the new code. So here's just a graphic summary of that new site plan review threshold table. You can see that you still have 3 tiers. Director is intended to hear most. The bigger stuff goes to the planning commission, and the really big stuff goes to the city council. Just as a commentary, you know, in a lot of our other projects, the overall trend over time is to start to eliminate the council role altogether, and a lot of these start to be heard more by the planning commission or the director. But we've talked about this, and this is, I think, a great next step for Glenwood Springs, and I really am pleased with all the discussion that the community has had on this. Administrative adjustments is here. You've got a lot of different particular types of standards that can be adjusted, potentially at the staff level, by up to 15%. We are going to clarify in the code that the height adjustments cannot be adjusted using this tool for wireless facilities. You can also use this tool for things like reasonable accommodations to comply with the Fair Housing Act, things like that. So this is a built-in tool to provide you more flexibility without having to go to a PUD, without having to go to a variance, something like that. So a lot of communities around Colorado have this, and they've had good experience with this. With that, let's go to the next topic, and I will turn it over to Tarek.
Mayor, council members, again, I would like to thank you for all of your support over the past couple of years. Truly has been a very good experience for us to work here. We love the valley. We love coming through the canyon, even on the extreme hot days with one lane, and just happy to be at this stage of the project. I'm going to talk about one of the most fundamental pieces of a development code, and that's what can you do and where you can do it. That's the districts and uses piece. I'll wrap up the presentation talking about the development quality standards. You'll remember there were a lot of changes there. I won't cover every single bullet point. There were a lot of substantial changes, but we'll try to hone in on the big topics. So beginning with the districts, you all had a pretty good set in terms of numbers of zoning districts for a community of this size. They all had a decent purpose statement, but we revised some of those purpose statements. We made only one consolidation, and that was the R16 and the R175 districts into a residential mixed district. And we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. We did rename most of the districts just so that it would be, instead of R16, what do we mean by that? We're really talking about a mix of residential densities. And so with the new nomenclature, trying to be more clear about the purpose of each district. We also proposed a couple of new districts through this process. One for your really big destination type mixed use centers. Think about your secondary centers that you called out in the comprehensive plan. That's where maybe this new M3 might be appropriate. It's not applied to the map today. Somebody would have to rezone to apply that to the map. Same thing with the institutional district. Think about hospitals, big schools, things that are just, they operate differently than a typical commercial use. So there's a new district for that. And then we eliminated the I-1 district. It had never been applied to the map. We still retained 2 industrial zoning districts, but did not carry that one forward. One of the bigger changes was hillside preservation. There were a lot of issues with that currently in Glenwood, just how you manage that protection of the hillside, but also not getting in the way of really good proposed development projects, especially as it relates to your downtown core. So we did a lot of work with staff and with you all to get that to a good place, ultimately carrying that forward as a base zoning district and not as an overlay, and taking the steep slope standards that were part of that overlay and applying those broadly depending on your limits of disturbance. I'm kind of foreshadowing to that development quality standards piece that we'll get to shortly. Since the Planning Commission hearing last month, we did make one change to that consolidation. In the process of consolidating the R16 and the R175, we were indeed creating several non-conforming lots in terms of the lot size. And although the non-conformities provisions really, they would still allow you to develop that lot, it was decided at that hearing that it would be better just to refer back to that current standard that, hey, if you subdivided that lot before March 1st, 1965, then your standard is 5,000 square feet, not 6,000 square feet. I think that's a great solution. It eliminates all of those additional nonconformities. So that change is noted on the errata sheet in your packet.
Can I ask a real quick question, not to get in the middle of your presentation, but how come we left the date in there? I thought we were kind of sort of talking about whether it was 1965 or 1985. Didn't really matter. Is there?
Well, it did matter because the lots, that's how it reads in your current code, yeah, that March 1st, 1965. And so if they're non-conforming today, we're not changing the number of non-conforming lots in terms of the lot size if we retain that date. Okay. So that was the reason. We thought it It might not be the most eloquent solution to this problem, but it was a very easy thing to do to make sure that we're satisfying some of the concerns there.
Yeah, I definitely like the 5,000, that makes sense.
Yeah.
To just call it that.
Yeah. We also revised the PUD both in terms of structure and procedures. Instead of treating PUDs as an overlay, which it's really not, it's negotiated development that really is outside of some of the standards that you see in the entire document. And we revised the procedure to say, you know, there's got to be some additional benefit. There's got to be approval criteria in place to make sure that you're getting a higher quality or at least a level quality when you're doing a PD. Also just making sure that we clearly stated that if it's not mentioned in the PUD document, all of the other standards in the development code apply to that property. So that was something that was missing in your current structure. We made several changes to the dimensional standards, as you'll see there. Some of the user-friendly piece is just a lot more tables to quickly discern what are my requirements on my property, what are the requirements on my neighbor's property, for example. Introduce new front setback maximums for some of the mixed-use districts, the mixed-use core in particular. The intent there is to say, all right, the purpose of a mixed-use zoning district, bring the buildings closer to the street, make sure that the parking is to the side or to the rear of the building. And we can achieve that in several ways, one of them through maximum front setbacks. And then we revise a lot of other setbacks and minimum lot areas in some of the other districts. As you saw, remember, we drafted this in pieces. We brought each piece to you. Lots of footnotes about how those changes were either more stringent or more flexible, mostly more flexible. Now, since the consolidated draft earlier this spring, there are a couple of changes that I want to highlight. One, we revised the purpose statement for the River Industrial District. We did make some changes to the building height based on one of our last conversations with you all. Previously listed as 38 feet, we knocked that up to 40 feet just for consistency purposes. And then clarified really the overall measurement of height. And I'll show that here. That's the new measurement for building height. We think it's clean and simple and easy to understand, and we've provided lots of different roof types and building types to further communicate how building height is measured in Glenwood. So moving on to the next piece of the districts and uses, we'll talk about the use regulations. First and foremost, a new table. I love this table. I think it's great. We do this in most of our new development codes. It's a really, Matt said one-stop shop. I'm going to say that again. But we systematically looked at all of the types of uses that you might see in Glenwood. We divide them first into a very high-level category. Is it residential? Is it commercial? Is it industrial? Now, that's just to organize the table. Then we get into the use category, that far left column. In residential, is it household living? Is it group living? Are people living on one house on a lot, or is it a different type of thing? And then the specific use types are all of those that need a special type of permission, and that's what you see in the cells there. Blank cells means no, you can't do it in that particular zoning district. A P means it's permitted by right. That means, you know, you still might need to do a site plan. You still might need a building permit, but that is, you don't need to have a decision made on it as to whether or not that's an appropriate use in that zoning district. Now the S's mean it's a special use permit required. That, yeah, it might be okay in that zoning district, but we need a public hearing to make that final determination. The use-specific standards column, that second to last column on the right, that is an important distinction, especially as we get into some of the more intensive commercial uses and industrial uses. You might see a P in that district. You might see an S in that district. That doesn't tell you the whole story. You have to click on those use-specific standards to really understand what other standards do I need to comply with. Can I be do I have to be a certain distance away from residential properties? There are additional design standards. There's a lot of those standards that make it appropriate. That is why you can have a P or an S in some of the districts where otherwise you could not. And then finally, we included the parking requirement in the table just to create that one-stop shop so that you know every use has a defined parking requirement. I'll go back up And I list some of those examples of use-specific standards. Live-work dwellings. This is where people are living in one part of the building, they're working in the other. The standard says you have to, the living space has to either be on top or behind the commercial activity. And that's so that you're maintaining that active streetscape. Cities that do not have that standard often end up with apartments on their main street. You'll have store, all of a sudden somebody's living room. And so it's a good, easy fix for that. Microbreweries, making sure you're not having deliveries and outdoor storage in places they shouldn't be, especially related to residential districts. And then mini warehousing. This is a good example of an industrial use that might go outside that overall industrial organizational category, might get into some of the mixed-use districts, but there are standards in place. You can't have your doors facing the public right-of-way of those storage units. You can't be having other activities other than the storage of goods and personal property in those units. So lots of protections here, a lot of good things for Glenwood. We also, in this section, cover accessory and temporary use standards, put some size limitations on those, and then locational and operational standards as well. A lot to cover. Some of the changes since the spring draft. We had a conversation with you all about cemeteries and funeral homes and mortuaries. Which districts should those be allowed in, given that you have all of the other standards in place? And so those were expanded to several additional zoning districts, mostly with an S, a special use permit. So there'll be a public hearing for those. We revised the parking standards for multifamily from 2 to 1.5 per dwelling, and then you also require guest spaces as well. And again, most of these changes just based on the policy discussions that we've had since that consolidated draft. Marijuana, a new standard prohibiting the discernible odors beyond those exterior walls. We included something to prevent the slot homes. If you all have been reading the Denver Post by chance, then you'll see this has been a really big problem in Denver, and it has the potential to be a problem elsewhere. Making sure that the dwelling units actually face the street which they're located on, so that you're not getting tuck under parking and you're looking at the side of a building in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So we included that protection as well. We revised the height of ADUs to 27 feet. Previously, it was limited to just the height of the principal structure. We thought we should be more specific here. And by the way, almost all of your residential zoning districts have a maximum height of 27 feet for the principal building anyhow. So it was good to just clearly state that. Home occupations, we previously had a provision in there that said they could only be located in principal structures. Well, we heard a lot of feedback that no, a lot of people are working from home these days, and we don't really want to limit ourselves in that capacity. So we removed that particular standard. That's a lot. We're 2/3 of the way there. Going to be efficient with this third piece, but it's a big one too. It's the development quality. Raising the bar for quality development without acting as a barrier was a key function of this project. Beginning with sensitive lands, remember we organized the development standards from the ground up. First, we need to look at the site as a whole, slopes, ecology, all of those things before we start going up with the buildings. A lot of revisions. A new limits of disturbance was established, and we talked with you at length about this, made a lot of changes there, but again, rather than looking at slopes on average for the entire site, tell us where you're going to build, and let's look at the slopes in that part. That really opens up a lot of opportunity to do great projects, still protecting those steeper slopes. Open space standards, we had given you some options in the previous draft. We ended up going with this option where you're, instead of your current process where you have a minimum common open space requirement, 200 square feet, we're defining it, we're scaling it by the type of use. So 20% of your lot area for residential, and you'll see going lower as you increase the intensity. Not as much of a need for common open space in industrial areas. Landscaping, I won't cover all of these bullets, but a lot of tables. There's a new alternative landscape plan procedure. You'll see a similar procedure in the building design section as well, that, hey, we think we've done a good job of capturing all of the standards here, but somebody's going to come to you tomorrow with a development application that still meets the intent of the code and might actually have additional benefits that you would want to be able to approve. This alternative landscaping plan procedure allows you to do that with some guidance and criteria that it has to provide an added benefit. We made a lot of changes to the parking standards just based on feedback that we heard, tweaking the numbers, not major changes to those. We added a new fee in lieu option. Again, you all know about that. At some point, you'll need to decide what that fee in lieu is worth in terms of a monetary number. But it is an option now. It's not automatic. It's something you have to ask permission to do a fee in lieu, and that begins with the director. A lot of design standard changes. You have a lot of design standards already, but the problem today is that they're scattered throughout the code. We put them into a nice place, giving them one home, and made a lot of revisions, a lot of revised illustrations. We incorporated, because the 6th Street plan was recently adopted, we were able to take those recommendations and bring a lot of that information into the development code. So that was a seamless transition. And like I mentioned, alternative equivalent compliance, similar to that alternative landscape plan. Changes since the spring draft. We revised the applicability of the sensitive area protection standards to include anything that requires a special use permit, anything that requires a variance. You need to comply with sensitive area protection. We exempted the downtown core, so think of right downtown here, from the limits of disturbance process. We revised that cluster development incentive. We were offering a bonus in the previous draft. To simplify that, we're just giving a carte blanche reduction in lot size by up to 25%. So that, hey, you can do more lots, or you could do the same number of lots by protecting that side of the property. We're going to allow that to happen by giving you a smaller lot size for each of those lots. And then we removed the density transfer section, and I already talked about the common open space changes. We had those two options. We decided on the other. Landscaping, more trees on the street frontage in the downtown core was an important piece of feedback that we heard. Exterior lighting, it's not really a major topic, but going from watts and lumens, which you have kind of a mix today, to just referencing lumens, because you care about the brightness, really more so in the lighting section than you do about the use of energy. You have other codes that achieve the energy efficiency part of doing development. And then finally, I will end on the signs piece, clarified standards for the electronic message boards, added new standards for pole signs and portable signs. You're going to see a lot of that downtown, but you want a way to be able to manage those over time if they become overly prolific. So, that's a lot, but we got through it. Quickly talk about next steps, and then we'll open it up for discussion, of course. This is a pretty quick turnaround. Assuming that the second reading would be on August 2nd, then the packet needs to go out before that. So really any additional feedback from the public would have to be received by Gretchen on July 24th. That's next week. So the time to pay attention and continue to pay attention is ongoing, but not for that much longer. And then just a reminder that the city had decided the effective date of the code would be 10 days following that second reading, so August 13th. And then any future substantive updates to the map, that's a 2019 project. Again, what the interim zoning map that you see today, it represents the new names, the new symbols, and the consolidation of that one district. And that is it. So thank you for your attention this evening. And we'll open it up.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Matt or Tariq?
I don't. Can we get a copy of the PowerPoint?
Absolutely. Yep. I will leave it on the desktop, actually.
All right. Any other questions?
I do have one. One other question. The parking ratio change from 2 to 1.5. Can you talk a little bit about what other municipalities are doing in terms of that ratio? Either one of you would be fine.
Yeah. there is no consistency among the way that people park developments like that. It is really all over the map. You'll have a lot of communities that just have a one-size-fits-all approach for all types of residential. You'll have others that define it by the number of units that you have within a building and the size of the unit, whether they're a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, or more. The 1.5 is not outrageous. 2 was a little bit high, given the recent market conditions and how people are actually parking multifamily buildings, not just nationally, but even here within the valley. And affordable housing, I said the word, the AH word, but there are lots of ways you can start chipping away at affordable housing as an issue. One of the ways is to loosen up on parking standards to allow additional units to be constructed. That was not necessarily the total nexus for that reduction, but bringing it more in line with market standards in Glenwood.
Correct. So I imagine that in the places where there's flexibility, there's some consideration of access to transit. I mean, do you see that
Absolutely.
as a factor within some municipal codes?
Yeah, we do, and you'll see there's a whole section on parking alternatives in the Glenwood Development Code too. There's the standard ratios that you'll see in the table. Then there are a bunch of alternatives. Like if you're providing a lot of bicycle parking, or if you're in close proximity to transit, or if you have carpool share, a lot of communities will say, that's a high value to us. We can reduce your parking, and it's not always automatic, but you can at least ask the director to reduce the parking up to a capped percentage, because there are other playing factors that just don't place as high of a demand.
So is that like a 15%er you're talking about, or?
20%.
20%?
Yes.
Okay, and you said reduce. It could also go the other way?
Well, I would doubt somebody would ask you to increase their parking requirement.
Yeah, I would doubt
I suppose,
that too, but.
I think we say reduce, in fact.
Okay.
Yeah. 125. So there is a maximum parking requirement in this code, and that's a standard 125% of the minimum required.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just want to clarify something. Catherine, thank you, just told us that the effective date would be August 16th. It's 10 days after it's published, right, in the newspaper? Yeah, sorry for that mistake.
For your benefit and for Matt and Tariq's, we did agree earlier this afternoon to hold a special council meeting on Tuesday, July 31st at 6 p.m. to primarily discuss the wireless communication facilities. And there's a possibility, I don't know how significant of a possibility, but there's a possibility that elements of the code might change at that point. Does that present any problem for us hearing it 2 days later? No.
No, one of the reasons earlier today I asked that we do it on Tuesday instead of Wednesday or even earlier in the night on Thursday was to give us time to make those changes. My gut tells me they're not going to be significant, or it's going to be a word here or there, I think, probably depending on, after my talk about what we can and can't do. So, but that gives us time to get it done.
Okay. All right. Any other questions before I open it up to public comment?
I have one quick question. I just wanted to verify with Gretchen that I think it's in the memo, for the RM1 zone. So we did go for a two-family dwelling, that's going to be a special use?
Right.
Okay, and that'll get a public hearing?
Yes, and
Okay.
the minimum lot size for that is 7,500 square feet. So you have a
Oh, it
higher.
is?
Right.
Okay.
You have
Even
to
in
meet
the
that higher
R16.
lot size threshold, yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks.
All right, any other questions? Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on this item? Sir, please come up and give us your name and address. And
How are y'all this evening? Appreciate you being here. First I've been in this room in a long time. So, been doing a lot of stuff in Parachute. My name is Hayden Rader, P.O. Box 686, Glenwood Springs, Colorado, for the last 30 years, anyway. Anyway, I'm here to talk a little bit about the development standards and basically a letter I received recently from Gretchen here, and we had a little conversation. My partner and I actually owned a number of the lots over on Denver Street, base of the hill, east side, next to the river, hillside property, 61 lots, and also another 20 acres, which includes the Scout Trail, which the city leases from us annually, and basically indemnifies us with insurance every year to make sure if there's any problems on the property that we're covered. We haven't spent a lot of time on this property over the years. It's been between the economics and the ongoing changes in the codes and the hillside preservations and all the stuff since we bought the property some almost 20 years ago, back in 1999. We got engaged a little bit when Andrew McGregor was basically working in the planning department, but since then we really haven't been involved with the economy going down, everything happening. It was time to probably start getting involved now knowing that there is a big change in the code, and again, you know, we're doing what we can to try to figure out how we can deal with the property and development. We didn't buy the property to put out as just open space in the beginning. We bought it as an investment for future as a developer, excuse me, that I am. And we're gonna, you know, we're trying to find some ways to make that all work for everybody along with the Scout Trail and all this stuff. We're very sensitive to everything going on with the community. In fact, it's really important to me how we all work together on this. One of the big issues that we worked on many years ago and kind of ongoing was how we protected ourselves with what had been the hillside preservation overlay that basically came on all of our properties. And at that time, we basically had there was a provision in the code that allowed for non-contiguous ownership would protect its development rights. So we went through and spent a ton of money, you know, taking the properties and putting them in different types of ownership so we could protect our rights. We're now back at a new thing where we haven't really analyzed in depth what the new code and what the effect is, other than a couple of comments that Gretchen and I had, and now kind of working with a variety of different things. We were looking at different possibilities for the property to work with the community in easements and leases and potentially conservation easements or open spaces, and we're really exploring a lot of different possibilities here at this point to make this work, because the time is right to work out something with the city, the community, and ourselves to figure out how we benefit from this property and make it work for everybody. So, you know, kind of at this juncture, we are exploring a variety of different possibilities, and we'll begin to start engaging the city. We have a little bit, my attorney has spoken with Jim New, I believe, and Dave McConaughey, and we're starting to kind of work through the thing. One of my concerns at this juncture is that this code goes into place and we don't have an opportunity to work out what we need to work out prior to this code and some of the hillside development standards going into effect before we can resolve some of the issues. We fully want to work with the city and work with everyone, and everybody can win in this situation. And that was how we went into it when we bought the property way back when. At that point, we had the right to do, you know, all the development that we had. Currently, the 61 lots we have are all set in the R16 district. Some of them are in the 5,000 square foot category. Some of them are in the 6,000 square foot category. Gretchen and I had a conversation that she clarified in the letter that went out, because the letter didn't clarify that the 5,000 square foot would be grandfathered in. It is, and I appreciated that with you, Gretchen. That was great. So then getting beyond that, we then have the 4 or 5 acre parcels that is surrounded by city property of 140 or 160 acres that surrounds this parcel. These 4 or 5 acre parcels sit in the R140 district, currently zoned. The other sits in, like I said, the R16 district, the 31 lots. We have, a fairly substantial development right based on what we thought we had back when we had done our non-contiguous ownerships, and then the changes continue to happen. And it's hard to really keep on top of it when there's so many things going on and the economy's going where it's at. But our plan, mainly what I want to do is just come and introduce myself, my partner, Dieter Cantrip. We've been the owners and paid the taxes and done all the stuff to protect the property over all these years, and have worked with the city to maintain our lease and allowed, free latitude for the pedestrians and all that. We allow the police department to go and monitor the property for all the homeless and all the potential problems over the years. They're up there now doing a pretty big clearing of the area because of all the fires and the danger. And so we encourage them and allow them to go up, and I think they're cleaning all the stuff up now and bringing it all down and packing it up and give them a chance to look at it, and they're hauling it all to the dump. Where in the previous years, they've kind of gone up there and moved all the homeless out and left all of the stuff up there. It's really a product of, having the access up into the mountains and what have you. And we've tried to be a real good steward to the city and do everything that we can to be friendly. And we want to continue that, So what we're looking for is for the city to kind of work with us a little bit, and we don't want to get closed up in a corner with the code coming into place. As these gentlemen have said, you got a small window here to clarify and work out the details if you have a concern. We're here because of that concern, and just wanted to make note of it, step up. We will be engaging the city in real short order with the planner and also our attorney, Dave McConaughey, to work through some of these different options that we have to have a great project with everybody here in the city. That was what I had to say.
All right, thank you.
I'm mindful.
Thanks,
So.
Nathan.
Any questions any of you have for me?
Okay. How many lots did you say you owned?
61 city lots, and they're all part of the original town site. And it sits there, basically Denver Street. We have the Denver Street, which is the 75-foot right-of-way that goes up last street of the town, basically on the southeast side of the town. Then we have all the stuff that leads up to the Scout Trail on Cleveland and Salina. I can't remember the exact name of that. So on that, and we have a lot of great ideas for some of the stuff that we could do together or work out, or the city can do. We're going to be real flexible, real open. But I want to have this dialogue that we can work together, and we don't get shut down in something like this. And I want to keep it friendly, and always can be. So we look forward to speaking with you all more on this subject. I just don't know how we take this meeting at this point and go into the different first, second, third reading without having this issue somewhat resolved. There may be some internal agreement that we can take some provision in here, and I'll have Dave McConaughey basically contact the city here too.
Okay.
And we'll see if we can't work it out.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Unless you have any questions.
Denver Street is like east of Garfield.
Yeah, exactly.
It's completely undeveloped, but on the.
Exactly, yeah. Garfield Street's, it's where they just built the new house that went up.
Yeah.
All that stuff that sits right up against there, and then up the mountain through there. And the Scout Trail, that all comes up there, and it's all on the zoning map there.
I've never seen that street sign here. It's Denver Street.
Yeah, it's out of sight, out of mind. Well, one of our companies, one of the corporations, because when we had to do the non-contiguous ownership, one of the corporations was Denver 7th, for lack of better way to come up with names. So that was basically Denver and 7th Street.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to comment on the development code.
Sir? I'm short.
All right.
Yeah, my name's Dieter Cantrip. I live 745 Heather Lane. Grew up in Aspen. I'm local, got shoved down to Glenwood as things grew. But anyway, I guess what we're after is the new rule of you can't build on a 30% grade on the hillside preservation. And not just us, but there's many properties, you know, adjacent to the ground level of Glenwood that I think, you know, in my mind, I think that the rule, that's fine for somebody building up on a house. You're trying to protect the mountainside. But I think people could build, you know, with guidance, with Glenwood, something that's not an eyesore, you know, something that works, and everybody should have a, you know, a chance to do that. Now, anyway, enough said.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Any further comments? All right, seeing none, I will close it to the public and bring it back to council. Shelley, your light is flashing. Was that from before?
No, I had a quick question that kind of brought up, and we might have seems like I might have asked this in one of our earlier hearings, but I'm not sure where it ended up. How do we still have a blue line? And if so, how has that been dealt with in this code? Or is that just through water?
The blue line is really represented in the comprehensive plan, and was traditionally the city's limits of our ability to serve water.
Water service,
anything
right.
above that blue line.
Okay.
And then, if I recollect correctly, it was also referenced in the old hillside preservation overlay zone requirements. Does that sound right? Yeah.
Is that still in there? Or
no, that part was taken out of our our new hillside sensitive areas standards. I think it had to do with, oh, I know what it was. It was the limits, it set the limits by when the HPOZ kicked in. So either you had slopes on your property that were over 20%, or you were at that elevation, whichever it is, and I can't remember what it is right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where does that leave us? Or is it still in the
It's still in the comprehensive plan.
So does it still apply?
Yeah, and it applies.
Well, the comprehensive plan is obviously a guidance document.
Right.
And certainly for us to serve above what we refer to as the blue line, there is difficult, and it requires, it's going to require pumping, it's going to require a tank. I mean, the development at that level is an entirely different thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it still exists in the comp plan as guidance on where development should occur relative to our ability to serve water. More, not so much what's inside the city limits, but what's in our 3-mile planning area. Honestly, is probably what it affects the most from a utility service standpoint.
Right.
And then I think in the new version of the code, and you guys who are much more familiar with every word, I think we really deal with slopes as a performance standard, as opposed to more the prescriptive way that we were dealing with it in the original HPOZ regulations that were adopted in 99-2000.
Any other questions for staff? I would entertain a motion.
So I'll go ahead with a motion here, and your concerns are duly noted. This is first reading, so we have a few weeks here before second reading, and I do think our code actually probably is a little even more flexible, and maybe even a little more easy for you guys to navigate with your property over there. So, but again, this being first reading and us trying to stay on task and on time, I would move to approve Ordinance 19 Series of 2018, repealing and replacing Title 070 of the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code and amending other sections of the Municipal Code that reference Title 070 with findings listed on page 5 and 6 of the staff report dated July 19th, 2018.
Second.
A motion by Todd and a second by Steve to approve ordinance number 19, series of 2018, repealing and replacing Title 070 of the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code and amending other sections of the municipal code that reference Title 070 with the findings listed on page 5 and 6 of the staff report dated July 19th, 2018. Any further discussion? I'm just going to say thanks to staff and to Matt and Tariq and Clarion. This has been a very long effort. I think when Todd and I first got on council about 7 years and 4 months ago, we had a meeting with the city manager and city attorney and public works, or not public works, the community development director, a week or two after we got on council, and asked, what do we got to do to amend the development code? And here we are, 7 months, or 7 years, 3.5 months later. So I think this is a good step, a step in the right direction, and I recognize that we're going to find flaws in this as we move forward over the next couple of years, 10 years, 20 years, but I think it's a lot better than what we had, so thank you. Jonathan.
Yeah, I just want to thank the council people, Mike, Todd, Rick, and Catherine Trauger. Steve Davis, what did I say? Rick? No, I meant Steve Davis. Well, maybe I didn't mean to say Rick, damn it. We, Shelley, Rick, and I came on, you know, this thing was a lot of work had been done by staff and by you guys. And, you know, for me to jump in and start to have opinions on it was really inappropriate. So I really appreciate the work that this took from you guys, from past council folks that aren't on council right now, and definitely from Gretchen and the other staff. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully with all this congratulation, the motion will pass.
Oh, I'm still going to vote against it, don't get me wrong. Wait, Steve, Todd, and Mike did it? Yeah, I'm definitely voting against it.
Just a setup.
All right, any further comments? Let's call the question.
Ingram, yes. Godus, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kelp, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Gretchen, and all your staff, community development, Jen.
Oh my gosh.
Pretty sure both of those ladies slept with the development code book for at least a month.
I look forward to trying it out. I've been waiting, waiting patiently.
It took so many meetings, there were so many.
All right.
I know, exactly. You figure right off the bat, I did something to myself.
But you do have me, you, right?
Thanks. I'll be the first guy saying, why? Why do I have to do that? Why do I have to do that?
I expect to never hear from you again on development code.
At least I only have myself to blame now.
Right, exactly.
Yep. All right. So moving on, we have questions. We have some decisions to make regarding our tax polling questions. We had a work session earlier this evening, and now is the time to pontificate. I didn't mean to cut everyone off earlier, but we had 3 work sessions to fit into a tight schedule, and so pontificate away. Do we want anyone to make a staff presentation?
I guess I can give that a shot, or Steve can. What I'm going to say just is, you know, we are looking at what to do with our fire tax and what to do with our street tax if we want to put these issues on the ballot. You guys, we've done polling data that you have access to, and tonight is the night to make a decision on what direction to give Carl on the question to bring back.
And not that I am averse to listening to someone pontificate, but this afternoon we did kind of reach, it seemed like, at least a majority consensus in 2 directions on the fire tax. I think the consensus was to go for just a 20-year extension of both operations and capital. and on the street tax was to go for a 3/4 cent sales tax increase for streets. We never got around to talking to a sunset date on that particular tax. Do we need to get to that level of specificity tonight?
You wouldn't have to, it would be helpful if you did. I'm gonna be back probably at the next meeting with draft language for you to look at on those issues. Certainly that's something that can be that sunset provision can be blank if you want to leave it at that. I know you guys have had a long day, but it's kind of up to you guys.
We have thrown around 10 years, just because at 3/4% we think we can get most of it done, and that seems reasonable.
Don't we just go ahead and put 2 motions out, one for the fire and one for and go off of what the work session
Yeah, that would be fantastic. It gives me clear direction on where I'm going.
You want to do the motion on the fire department? You kind of have that where we're at with.
Appropriate that I make a motion?
Yeah, nobody's going to beat you.
Okay, well,
And then-
should we open it up for,
Matt is really opinionated on this issue.
Well, I was going to say one thing to keep in mind that
do you guys want to comment on this item?
Yeah, I will be bringing this back in a form of resolution approving these questions. And there's also going to be an implementation ordinance that goes along with that at some point between now and November. So from that standpoint, the public's going to have a couple of opportunities to comment on this.
And we'll get an opportunity to waffle.
And you will have plenty of opportunities to waffle. Well, actually, you get one opportunity to waffle, and that would be the first meeting in August.
Okay.
So we do have opportunity to pull back from one of these. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, all I'm looking for is clear direction on what I'm drafting for the next meeting. That's it. I'm not looking for a final decision. I just release the hounds kind of thing.
Why would we tell you what we want you to draft for next meeting, and then everybody next meeting changes their mind?
Well, because
have you met my city council in Glenwood?
I'm really clear.
I know.
Yeah, you were clear before today's meeting too.
It has occurred.
So it's just regardless, the formality of approving the resolutions has to take place.
So as a practical matter, since our city attorney didn't draft up electronic remote participation agreement, I will not be here. And I believe one of the questions we talked about today was kind of split vote. So if I'm not here, then if it were to go and no opinions or mindsets change, then it's 3-3 and fails. So how would that be dealt with?
Yeah.
I mean, the will of council
I
today.
thought we had to have the specific language by the end of August.
We do. I mean, I'd like to have draft language to you at the next meeting. We could push it off. Are you going to be back for the second meeting in August? Then we'll
Like
probably,
it's in, yeah.
See, and I'm even not agreeing with you on that issue, but I'm trying to work it out to where you can be here to vote for it.
Because I would come back for that vote.
Yeah, so I'd like to get some draft language in front of you guys, at least to hand out and talk about a little bit in the morning at the next meeting. This is, for a lot of you guys, the first time through looking at ballot language. So I think it's important to give you an opportunity to see it ahead of time. We can take the final action on it at the second meeting in August.
So we don't, I'm just trying to get clear in my mind, so we don't need motions this evening, you have clarity?
Yeah, I think I have clarity. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that I'm drafting a keep it the same on the fire issues and a 3/4 cent increase.
Same for 20 years on fire issues.
For 20 years and 3/4 on for 10 is where I'm going to start. The only reason for that is that I have to identify, well, it won't change on the sunset, but we just need to do some math on the 3/4 so that we can identify the right numbers in the question.
And I'd want to know also if 10 years is enough. I'd feel more comfortable when we have, because we don't have that list. Yeah, I guess I'm looking at Steve's head. Or then maybe that's
maybe looking at Matt.
Well, I'm looking at the finance guy and the engineer guy. I guess, I mean, I don't need it now, but, you know, you have a list you're developing. I have seen that list in Transportation Commission. I don't think the entire council necessarily has or has seen it. I know there were some questions about subgrade and curbs and gutters and things that, I'll just be very honest. If you tell me it's 10 years and we can get all of it done, I will go with our experts, but I just have a very, very hard, my gut tells me.
Do you think there'll be inflation over the next decade?
No, none.
I added inflation to the numbers too.
Well, and I don't even necessarily need that, but I think by the next meeting, it would be good to have, I think the will is to get stuff done and get all the failed streets taken care of, and I'm doubtful that 10 years does it.
We were kind of looking at it a little bit from the perspective of voters also, though. You know, if you look at 20 years, you want to give us this money for 20 years. You know, it's a little more palatable to give us for 10 years. That's $38 million plus or minus a 3/4 cent. You can correct me on that if I'm wrong. You know, best guess at this point is we're looking at about $28 to $30 million worth of repairs with inflation and everything else. I'm still obviously working on that piece of information. So I'd like to be able to clarify that, but, you know, we're looking at a big chunk.
And I guess I would just be looking at what, you know, from staff, what does it take to get all of our failed and nearly failed roads reconstructed? What is that dollar amount? And then we can politically decide if 20 years is too much, 30 years is too much, or 10 years. I mean, I think I'd rather not have staff making the political calculation on behalf of the voter.
Sure, I understand that. So we can, we'll come up with that. And it's also going to be one of those considerations, so you guys are thinking about it also. We're doing small levels of work this year. We'll consider it small levels. And we're already seeing quite a bit of pushback from people. So if we start throwing $3 million worth of construction work at separate parts of town, people are going to start hitting that construction block too. So just something to think about a little bit here. There's a lot of things going on with this dollar amount, not just dollar amount, but how much can we do in 1 year with staff that we currently have, contractors, everything that kind of comes together with this conversation. So
which sort of, it goes to your point, which says, you know, if we, by ordinance or whatever it is, limit ourselves to 10 years and then we find out, you know, that the city can't really cope with that much construction, and now we're looking at 12 years, and we have to go back and modify, and I think you're saying, let's give ourselves the flexibility to get the job done and get it right. Have a sunset provision, but don't make it so tight that we get ourselves into a box.
Well, and by ordinance, we can repeal a tax if we get it done in 17 years instead of 20, for example. But if we get to 10 years and we haven't accomplished what the voters thought they were voting to give us, then I think we've broken the trust.
Totally agree.
And Shelley, I know you have a question, but just on this point, there's kind of another thing I've been pondering. Our regular half-cent street tax expires in 2026. If this gets approved, this will expire in 2028. What happens in 2026? Because we're asking to increase the street tax by 3/4 cent for 10 years.
I think that will kind of depend on the will of council.
I was looking at the election calendar.
So that's all right. Our current half-cent sales tax on streets expires in 2026. This, if we get it approved, will expire in 2028. This is just an increase of our street tax for 3/4 cent for 10 years. You see, what the hell happens in 2026? We lose a half-cent?
Well, yeah, and
I don't know.
So I guess that is a question I have. Are we increasing it to 3/4, or are we adding a new 3/4?
I think we want to add a 3/4 because if that 2026, they don't approve it, in 2027, we're still a 1/4 cent better than we are right now today, right? So decoupling it, I think, makes a lot more sense than putting all of our eggs in a 1.25 cent basket that is a renewal.
Well, also,
and that's something I need to go back, and that's one of the things that complicates this particular question, and I want to talk to Tom Peltz about it on bond council as to how to word that, because we really do want them to sync, and then the reality is you're really asking for a renewal and an increase to 20 whatever date, 10 years out.
Or 20.
Or 20 years. So if honestly what it may be, and that's why I need to tinker with language, is what it may be is you're asking for a renewal for 20 years and an increase for 10. You follow?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So then our half-cent wouldn't expire until 2038.
Then we're talking about a half-cent plus 3/4, so you're talking about 1.25 on the ballot instead of 3/4 on the ballot. That's what I'm saying. So that's why I kind of want to think about how we deal with that issue.
Well, before we get too stuck on a decade, you know, I think we need to look at Matt's numbers. You know, he may come in with 12 years.
Right, well, I think we will, but I mean, it's a good point on when the current tax expires, because somewhere in the middle of this run, we're going to have to go back on the half-cent to get it renewed, because that's when
Which
our general
it'd be
operation-
great if we could clean that up, at least to get these two to synchronize, you know?
Right, and I think that's going to mean then the better move would be to shorten this one so that it matches the current street tax. Because I don't think you want to ask for 1.25.
And then you're giving a little bit back then.
Then we're going
It's
to, for 8 years.
Right, and I know, and that's where just like, I'll give you some options, but there are some issues there that what it looks like on this ballot question at this time, that's a significant difference to go from 3/4 to 1.25.
But why can't we have a question that just exclusively, I mean, if we were trying to raise money for literally anything else, this is very specific to street reconstruction. Why is it, because this isn't a street maintenance half-cent technically, it's a congestion tax, from what I remember from the wording in 2005.
Yeah, no, what Mike was saying is that we have these two that are not gonna, one's gonna expire before the other one.
But so does our A&I, and so does other stuff.
And that's fine, I'm just, that's what I was saying, is that the difficulty with linking the two is it becomes this much bigger question. So my gut tells me to leave them delinked.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
I agree.
Yeah,
I don't know why we consider linking them.
I like having the word being different, repair and restoration, not just street tax, which we already have, reconstruction, something like that. And it also, we were chatting this morning, I said, people said, I want to be able to see my streets. I want to be, I don't want a nickel of this spent on other stuff. And then once you start putting it together, even if we think we can do the accounting, people are going to say, well, wait a minute, this is getting commingled with the street fund, and that's going to be a problem. And not to mention, all of a sudden, we're talking about a 1.25 number instead of a 3/4.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to use the word existing streets. Not with the idea that we're going to help develop brand-new streets with the money either, because I think that's where the focus of the problem is. But I see our city manager had an idea here.
Well, two things. One is I would suggest you let Carl and I figure out and give you some options at the next work session. And the second thing is to ask for permission for this to come in not next Friday to you guys, but Monday, because I do not want Matt working 12 hours this Sunday to get it done by Tuesday. I mean, I know you would like to he's got to work 12 hours.
Well, and I'd like to hear from Matt, too. You mentioned some pushback on the projects. Can you go explain that a little bit? On the projects that we're getting going right now, on the chip and seal and all that.
I've heard rumblings of, people don't like the chip and seal process because for a couple of days the chip sits down and it kicks rocks up, and I just heard rumblings of that one. And obviously we had to change the schedule a little bit for milling downtown. I thought people would be super happy that they're getting a new road, and the businesses wanted to change our schedule, which we did for them. So I'm kind of anticipating that throughout all reconstruction processes with these roads. Does it work with their schedule? Does it work with our schedule?
They want to be hung with a new road.
Yeah.
But do you think
complaint about taxes.
Do you feel like it's related to what we've just gone through the last 2 years of having so much torn up and people are tired of construction, or is it just that it's in front of their house and it's their street?
In this particular case, I think it was the 7th Street being closed for so long, and all of a sudden Cooper Street's like, well, don't close me for 2 more days to do that. But it will come up as the, construction in front of my house. When is it going to happen? Is it completely on schedule? Can you do it next year or whatever?
And how about staff capacity for getting a plan done? Because I think a critical piece of this, if we're going to go against the recommendation of Community on the Move and the Chamber and, risk trying to pass this task, and in my mind, it could put the fire department tax at risk.
That's my biggest concern.
Are we going to be able to have a solid plan in place to have a very clear depiction to the voters? Or
so for 2019, our prospective projects are potentially Red Mountain, which you had mentioned the other day. We have those plans in hand. They're in
Right.
final format. We need to go through them a little bit closer and do some review to get them cleaned up. So, that's looking at $2.5 million project. Part of that is water and sewer funds. It's not all street funds. And then West Glenwood Sanitation and our water wastewater departments, our water department have been looking at the Cedar Crest subdivision, which is, the roads are fairly degraded, we'll say, as a pleasantry. They would like to combine their efforts in redoing the water and sewer up there, which is a large maintenance area for us and West Glenwood Sanitation. So pulling all that out next year and putting in new roadways with some drainage improvements to accommodate for. So we have 2 large projects that are going to be kind of sitting on the books for next year, along with millings, overlays, chip and seals, crack seals. Next year we're sitting pretty good for projects. And then we would just have to start this next year into the following year's projects, which we could pick a few subdivisions and move forward with them.
Well, just to market and sell an additional street tax, on top of what we already have is going to take a good story and a good marketing plan. And I'm just wondering if we have time to do that.
Currently, I'm looking at like a 6 or 7 year forward plan, which touches virtually every single road in town minus Wilson, East and West Meadows, and Airport Road, because those are complete reconstruction projects and they are significant in cost. But every other road we're looking at is not perfect. It'll be a living document, but where they fit into the schedule along with utility replacements, so we're not doing things twice.
Right.
So, we already have that laid out. The other piece of it, which is the more complicated piece that I keep working on and I try to move it forward, is the expensive portion of it, which is curb and gutter replacement, sidewalk replacement, additions of sidewalk, drainage improvements for certain areas, not getting too global.
Right.
But those are the things that are going to, potentially double the cost of what just the asphalt is.
Okay.
Matt's already driven every street in town. And he's
So will
been
we have
working on this.
a broad idea in about 2 weeks, kind of what we're looking at, so that we can discuss that? And as Shelley said, and I agree, I think we need some sort of marketing plan here. I don't think we can just sit here and say, this is what we think, and even if we have a schedule and just sit back and let the good times roll here, I think we're going to have to be really proactive.
There needs to be a pretty clear understanding and that once this goes out to ballot, the city isn't doing any marketing. They can't do any marketing. The city can't spend $1 of tax.
Oh, I'm not talking about slick brochures. I'm
So
talking
if
about
Community on the
public
Move doesn't want to
meetings.
do
I'm
it.
talking about talking what the schedule is. I'm talking about opportunities.
We can put the basic schedule together of if we get this tax, this is what we're going to do. This is how much it's going to cost. And that's pretty much it.
So who's going
to
promote it?
share a schedule with people?
What we can do is we can
schedule.
share information. What I always say is you can, once you've decided to put it on the ballot, you can describe what you would do with the money. You can describe when you would do it. You can talk about the impacts it would have, but you cannot say, and therefore you should vote for it. You can't advocate for the tax at that point. You can only describe the impact it would have on the community, and as soon as you advocate, you have violated the election laws.
Okay.
So if I go door to door, do I have to have a little bird on my shoulder that tells me
No,
when
so
I'm
that's
talking and when I'm advocating?
the distinction there is you cannot use public funds.
Right.
So if you acting as an individual and by way of example, either for the council or for staff, as long as you're not using a city-issued cell phone, you're not using a city email, you're not using city paper, you're not in the city car, you know what I mean? Seriously, it is very, just as long as you are completely divorced, and that's one for you guys, it gets tough because you have city-issued email addresses, and people are going to want to talk to you on those, and so if you don't have a Gmail account or some other email, you're going to want to get one, because this email address can't be used for campaign purposes.
So the council people that have not gone through this process, it might be a good work session to let us know what can and can't, what the city can and can't. If we don't have a lobbying arm, or a lobbying arm is not supportive of us, then you know, I agree with Rick, you know, whatever we want to do as individuals, you know, I still have free
Yeah,
speech.
absolutely, and I will help you out with that.
Okay.
And staff stays pretty far away from it.
Right.
Just as a side note for pondering is that, you know, if we were to move forward with a Red Mountain project, a Cedar Crest project, and everything else next year, we would have to hire out construction management on those projects, because water and wastewater do not have enough staff to even be in those places at the same time, neither do engineering or public works. So the thought is for next year, at least if nothing else, that, you know, we are not staffed heavily enough to accommodate that much construction at one time. So there will be additional expenses associated with it, and I don't know how that falls into the language that is potentially going to be written for Carl to ponder.
So I know we did a head nod on this, on these vote questions in a work session. Are we going to take a vote, or do you just need a head nod?
I think it would be helpful to have the vote, just so that Todd was willing to make a couple of motions, or might to make a motion on the fire one and Todd on the other one, or however we want to do that, but it would be helpful to have.
Okay, I would move that we direct staff to prepare ballot language for the renewal of the fire and EMS tax at the current rate for a period not to exceed 20 years for both operations and capital expenses. Is that a sufficient motion?
A second?
Oh. Not sure who got there first, Shelley? Okay, so we have a motion I made, seconded by Shelley, to approve the, or to direct staff to prepare ballot language for the renewal of the fire and EMS tax at the current rates for a period not to exceed 20 years. Any further discussion? Let's go ahead and call the question.
Ingram, yes. Godus, no. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kelp, yes. Motion passes.
All right, then someone else want to take a stab at that other motion?
I move that we direct staff to prepare a 3/4 cent tax for street reconstruction of existing streets for a sunset period of 20 years.
Did you say what the amount was?
Not to exceed.
Not to exceed 20 years. Not to exceed 3/4 cents.
3/4 cent.
Yeah. Not to,
Both.
Yes.
Amended.
I second that.
Okay, just for discussion's sake, I think we need this tax. I have been a huge advocate for fixing our streets since actually long before I was on council. I hope that I'm wrong in this, but I think it might be a mistake to go against the wishes of Community on the Move, because I don't think we'll get their support on this. And I don't mean political support, I mean their support to market and campaign on this issue. I think without it, we could run into a problem. So I won't be supporting this. Shelley.
And without pontificating, I'll just say I agree with Mike, and I really appreciate the enthusiasm and the push to get our streets fixed. I'm all for that, but I just think it's a timing issue. I'd rather see this in the spring, and I do really respect the opinion of Community on the Move. They've helped us a lot on these tax issues, and I also don't want to risk putting the fire district tax in any danger of not passing, because I think that's our highest priority right now. So I'll vote against it also.
Thanks, Shelley. Jonathan?
Not to pontificate, but, because that's what everybody needs to preface it with.
How do you spell that?
Pontificate, Pontifacate.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Someone knew how to spell it, since everyone's.
We're using it, right.
I think this tax will stand on its own. I think that the not going for an increase with the fire tax, we're only going for one increase as the city of Glenwood Springs, makes it more likely it polls. It's a scientific, valid poll. And if it doesn't pass, I feel good because the last time we did this, it didn't pass in the fall, and then we turned right around and it did pass in the spring in 2005. So I think we might have another crack if it doesn't. So for that reason, I'm voting for it.
I have one question for staff. I know we don't get to say where we are in order on the ballot relative to state taxes or district taxes. With respect to our questions, can we direct the order of our taxes on the ballot?
Yeah, I believe so. I think when it's more informal. I mean, it would be if we have two tax questions. I don't know how Jean's going to decide which one goes first, but the request.
Basically, the way she does it is whoever gets their questions in first is put, and they don't put in order that way.
We're going to have potentially 3 questions though, and so I think from that standpoint, those 3 will be grouped together. The order that they're grouped in, probably we can make a request.
I would request that we put fire and EMS first.
Yeah.
To the extent that has any impact. Okay, we have a motion by Jonathan and a second by Jim to direct staff to prepare ballot language for a 3/4 cent street reconstruction tax for only to be applied to existing streets with a sunset of 20 years. Is that a fair restatement of your?
You nailed it.
Not to exceed.
Not to exceed 20 years or 3/4 cents. Right.
Solely, exclusively, existing.
For existing streets.
Yes.
Direct staff.
Not. Now we're getting punch drunk.
Okay, we're going to restate that motion backwards now.
What about Denver Street?
We're not reconstructing Denver Street.
And we're going to work on language. Can I say something?
You can say something.
I don't say a lot up here, but I just think it's critically important that that's streets and alleys, not just streets.
I would amend that.
As you phrase that, because a lot of people are more concerned about their alleys than they are their streets. Particularly in my district.
We can wordsmith the wording.
I got the idea.
But I guess my question is, legally and technically, are alleys considered streets?
Well, they're public rights of way. So the language will be brought
Okay.
up. We'll include it just because, but they're defined differently in, say, the development code, but from the standpoint of public rights of way, they're kind of the same thing for me.
Okay.
Okay, any further comments? Let's go ahead and call the question.
Ingram, yes. Godus, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, no. Leahy, no. Voorhees, yes. Kalp, no. Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, so we can move on to our next item.
It's down and left is right.
Project tracking request.
Okay. I got requests to track project lists, I believe monthly, and this was just my check-in with you guys before I started doing it. Do you want this monthly? Do you want it quarterly? Do you want it just as needed? I'm guessing it'll take us about 5 hours every time we do it. I'll just create a format and send it out to senior staff and then send it to you.
Seems like quarterly, if 5 hours is what it takes. That's a lot to do every month.
How about every other month or something? Because my only thought is that 4 times a year, I mean, there's a lot going on. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to add work, but on the other hand, I mean, if it wasn't a problem to get the information and we could have it every council meeting, that'd be great. But I'm not asking, because I don't want you to spend 5 hours every 2 weeks to do this. So,
It's just a matter of priorities. I mean, I can't, my staff and I can't work any more than we're currently working. So if we do this, we're just doing less of other work, and that is totally fine. It's just whatever you guys want to see.
I think it's great we got a list, but I sure wouldn't worry about updating it updating us on every single one of these every month. That's just not necessary. I don't think it is.
No, I agree with you, Todd.
If it takes
That's
5
more
hours,
than
I mean,
Yeah.
we all know what the list is, and we all generally know by just our discussions generally where things are headed. So, I mean, if you're paying attention, you can look at the list and you kind of know.
I mean, another way to do it is, I suppose, say, here are the list items in which we want to be updated if there are significant changes or deviations from what, our expectations are.
Outside the quarterly updates, or every other month.
Yeah. Can I add to the list?
You can add to the list.
No.
I have to add to the list. No, I think once it's in a spreadsheet, you have a section and maybe, it gets updated whenever something significant happens, which might be a couple times a year.
Define significant.
Depending.
10%.
I mean,
I thought it was 15.
no.
Yeah.
Significant in moving
Well,
forward.
I think we ought to leave it to the judgment of the city manager to just say, hey, of this list, here's 3 things you need to know.
There you go.
And then if individual council members are looking at that list and they're really, intrigued by something, or somebody pulls their chain, then maybe we could ask for an update on that. But I think to regularize it and even to do it on a quarterly basis seems like, a little bit of overkill to me. So.
Because a lot of these come to us anyway, and I was hoping to add the landfill planning, which I don't.
That will be coming back shortly.
Right, and so a lot of them, they're going to come back anyway. So yeah, I don't feel a need to get a report on this every month or even.
Well, how about we get the first report? Because I'm assuming you're going to say, like Southbridge, you're going to say where we're at with it, right? I mean, you're going to describe that I'm assuming we're currently in negotiations with RAFTA regarding changes to the design to accommodate, to eliminate the need for a grade separated interchange. And as a result, we're going to be kind of starting over on our EIS. Is that fair assessment?
That could be what I would
Okay,
write.
so
I think Mike should do the updates.
I agree.
if I get paid my engineering fee to do the updates, I'll do the updates. Okay.
I mean, I think it'd be great to bring this up at least before council on a quarterly basis so that we could do the updates between the commissions and the boards we sit on. We can pretty much just go down the list and who knows what about what's going on, and then we can ask, like, why does nobody up here know anything about that? Is something going on or not, That's my thought. I don't want to just let this document die and fall into a closet somewhere.
I think as a placeholder right now, I think quarterly is probably fine. But can we get the first one and then just kind of go from there?
It's not a 5-hour discussion.
Well, I'm hoping not to, we create it and then we don't overly discuss it. Like you would just ask questions about it, because that would take hours.
I'm hoping that that's what this does, is it avoids those 15-minute, half-hour discussions about random issues, just because now we can just look on here and go, oh, here's what's happening with this project.
And I see a number of items just looking over.
That are kind of completed.
Yeah.
My guess is a lot of this was covered in the update we did of your council goals, last month. So we could start there and copy and paste it from there.
Do we do council goals?
I don't.
Council goals, what?
All joking aside, the amount of information that flows through both staff and you guys on a regular basis, it's a fair point. I don't remember you guys doing your council goal update either. I know we did it, but that's a great point.
We handed it out, yes.
No,
about the struggle with doing these updates.
I think a quarterly's fine. I agree with Mike. Let's get the first one out there. Are you still doing the monthly staff reports?
Yes.
Okay. Are they in our Dropbox
Yes.
since April?
Yes.
Okay.
Have you read them?
I have, I've only
Yes.
Since you didn't know they were there.
Well, I didn't, and then,
Suspect.
and then they told me I was, so I went back and read every one for the last 2 years, and I only got to April. April's only in my Dropbox, so. Are you wrong, or were you lying, Deborah?
I don't know. I know staff is still producing them every month.
Okay.
So one.
This is where you pick somebody in the audience and you go, Steve, how come that hasn't happened?
Jen, where are you with that?
It's twice in the
Because Jen sits behind the monitor where I can't see her as well.
That's why it's a booster chip.
There you
So,
go.
Deborah, can I say one suggestion, and I don't know if anybody else has used this, but I've used this before on project updates, and you can just, if you put it in a spreadsheet and go down the list, you can green light, yellow light, red light it. And if it's green, it's on schedule, it's kind of moving along like it's supposed to. If it's yellow or red, you might have a comment of what's going on, and that's it. It's just kind of a...
We'll take a look at a format and figure it out.
I think the simpler the better. If things are, going according to Hoyle, check, 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 check. If they're not, maybe a sentence.
Well, it'd be good though to say what, in my opinion, I used to have to prepare these when I was a consulting town engineer just for engineering type projects, and the town had a lot of engineering projects, and I would provide kind of key milestone dates of, okay, plans are expected to be completed December of 2018, and bids are expected to be received by February of 2019, kind of a thing. And then I don't disagree that being on, is it on schedule or not is good information, but I would admit that a lot of these, I don't know what the schedule is right now. I know South Midland, that was probably an example I was just using, My understanding at this point is plans are expected to be completed in December of 2018 and have it out to bid by February of 2019, probably, or have bids return. I don't know if that's still the case, but that was the last information I heard. Seeing Matt nodding his head, so I think that's correct. So, that kind of just basic information of, even if the project is just on hold, it's on hold because whatever, I think that's.
Cushman King lot, I wish
Yeah.
we'd quit calling it that.
It is now officially the Bethel lot.
That's what I thought, but it keeps showing up as.
When are we gonna do something with
I
that
did
lot?
not write the list.
And it doesn't have a schedule, but,
Name on it.
15% solution?
Yeah.
Steve?
Right.
So is everyone okay with a quarterly update of this? We'll get the first one and we can go from there.
I would not expect it at the next council meeting.
Okay.
Come on, it's only 5 hours.
Other stuff to do too.
I'm kidding.
Okay, any further questions or comments on that issue? Okay, moving on. Report from city manager.
Got like 6 things, but why don't we let Matt go first? Matt, you're back up.
I feel like I've been up here a lot today. The downtown trash compactors, I'm assuming is my thing. That might answer a little bit of the Cushman King lot question. So we have 4 trash compactors that are scheduled for downtown area, 2 of them to sit in the county lot adjacent to or behind Mr. Davis's building, actually, in kind of a bark area. We'll be going in front of BOCC August 6th to get approval for the easement. That easement will be in front of you guys on August 2nd. The language has already been approved by our attorney, their attorney. Mr. Martin has already kind of seen it. So it's more of just a formality of clarifying Exhibit E for our IGA that we have with them on all of the parking in town. So the other 2 are going to go in the Cushman King lot. The problem with those 2 is that I cannot construct them with the 2 giant trash cans that are sitting there now, because I will never get those trash cans back out again. They require all the space in the lot and the alleyway to back a truck in. So what we are planning on doing is around July 30th, returning the, I believe, 7 3-yard cans that were in that alleyway back to the alleyway, removing the 2 large cans that are there, and then we'll begin construction on the pads and the placement. Pads, electrical, asphalt, everything that goes along with those 2 trash compactors there after that. So hopefully within the first week of August, second week of August, we'll have those in and placed. In the meantime, I will work with our lovely city attorney to figure out how we're going to do the districting and how the trash is going to be collected and by who.
I mean,
It's late, we've talked a lot, so.
It's late.
So that is kind of the update on the trash cans. I just wanted everybody to know that those 2 containers will be going away and there will be re-emerging smaller trash cans for a hopefully short duration of time. Now that 7th Street is back open, less people are actually using that alleyway to kind of cut through, so it kind of helps the situation. Questions?
Is the Cushman King lot trash compactor also here then?
Yes, we own 4. 2 of them will be there, 2 of them would be in the parking lot of the county.
So is it as complicated as, you know, building a structure around it and having these rails that had to pull it out? I mean, or is this a simple?
These are 2 very simple trash compactors. They're 3-yard compactors, so they are physically able to be moved by a human being, turned 90 degrees and picked up with a truck. There are no rails. Those were 5 or 6-yard compactors, and they were going to be impossible to maintain in the wintertime. They would never slide out unless we heated them, which would be problematic. So I've met with the 2 trash companies that pick up down there currently. These are acceptable options for them. They both can maintain them because whoever gets the contract for servicing these things will also be required to maintain them. So they are a good compactor that you let us purchase. They were both agreed upon through the process and discussions with those 2 providers.
Are we building any structure to hide them, or for right now, just get them down there and get them functioning?
So the Cushman King lot, I was anticipating taking the 8-foot fence that is currently there and just sliding it over to hide the back sides of them. They will only be about 10 feet wide, so there will be a very narrow side view of it from the, we'll call it the east-west alleyway. Over in the county lot, we will do, once again, probably temporarily, just for cost savings this year, a screened chain link fence with gates, just like the county has across the street, but a little bit nicer. And then when we can come up with the money to construct the very nicely designed structure that the DDA has handed us, we will do that.
Okay, gotcha.
So both of these will be constructed, tied into the sanitary sewer system, so they drain?
So the ones at the Cushman King lot will not be. That is a little bit of a complicated tie-in. When the future building comes in, or whatever development is, we'll take that time and connect that. But there is a whole mess of utilities in that alleyway that would be very difficult to create that tie-in right now at an 8-foot depth. The one in the county lot, yes, we are intending, there is a tap just adjacent to it in the alleyway, digging down to that tap and bringing it up. Tying it in, we may not be legally allowed to do that at this point without a roof. We would be introducing stormwater to the sanitary sewer system, but I would like to drag the utilities we need over there now, so we're only cutting into the alleyway one time.
I understand that we don't have a budget to construct the building around it, and the roof on it, but I hate the thought of laying down an asphalt pad and then coming back and tearing that back out. And it just seems like it would be more prudent to try to find additional funds, which is not significant. It's within somebody's authority here to just go ahead and, I can make a statement, you don't have to get in the middle of this, to go ahead and put down an appropriate footing and concrete slab that you would never have to remove at that point. So that's just my statement, and we don't have to argue about it here.
No.
The other thing is, it's behind the book train, not my building, and
that guy back there knows where all the money is.
And it's the Bethel lot.
I will try to change the name in my head to Bethel Lot for future
We just hate
discussions.
to continue to throw Cushman's name to that.
I'm going to meet with SWAT next week and have the conversation if they feel like they can construct the shallow foundation that's associated with it. And if they can, you're right, it's not a huge cost if we're doing the work ourselves. You know, if I have to hire that work out, it's not a significant cost, but it's a little bit more than I was anticipating spending at this point. So I would have to go to the money man and Deborah to have that conversation, but I'll get it priced out and see where we can go with it.
And it will have to come from an existing budgeted project. I really don't have unending amounts of money just sitting in my office.
We had $25 million in reserves, I understand, based on our audit.
22.
22, okay.
Who's
22,
counting?
25. Who's counting?
Round.
That's all I know.
We're getting up there with the county. We're just missing a 1.
Okay, we have a request from the Tourism Promotion Board. If you guys would come to their August 9th meeting, if you can, they want to talk bathrooms.
We know that conversation.
But they want to talk bathrooms with you, and I think they want to force you to make some decisions.
Do they want to come to us with $250,000 to build bathrooms?
I think that is something we could ask them on August 9th. If not, the other option is we can invite them to another council meeting, but that, we kind of invited them and then they said, why don't you come to ours? So I was offering the invitation.
Can we invite the DDA to that funding conversation?
I could ask Lisa to invite the DDA.
Wait, I'm sorry, when is their meeting?
August 9th, and they said either 2 or 3 p.m.
What day of the week is on August 9th? So Monday?
Our meeting's on the 5th, right?
We don't have to say yes, but I felt like I needed to extend the invitation.
August 9th is a Thursday.
And August 2nd is a Thursday.
Oh, so you guys get kept saying August 5th, and I just went with it because it's, our meetings are always on my kid's birthday, so that's one of them. So I just figured it was.
How many kids do you have, Carl?
It's totally up to you guys what you would like to do. We can just invite them to a meeting as well.
Do we have to decide that right now? Kind of.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Todd.
I mean, I'm happy to go to.
Is it something that has to be, a quorum of council, or can some council members go and just kind of report back to?
I believe just some council members could go.
Because I have the RAFTA board meeting that morning, which takes up half a day, and.
Can you bring my iPad?
I'm not sure if I can.
But I'm dead serious. I think that this is a concern to the tourism board, to the DDA, and to the city. And so I think that if we're going to be talking about what people want, I think we should have all the players in there that have a concern.
How about we hold a how about we hold a joint once I don't want to do it. I can see if you won't be here at the beginning of August. I can see if they could all come at the first meeting in August and have a joint DDA tourism city council work session.
Regarding downtown bathrooms?
About downtown bathrooms.
So we can fit that in our first meeting in August schedule?
I can try. I mean, I know come the second meeting in August, you've got to focus on the budget for at least a month. That would be the only opportunity. I don't remember what I've already promised for that.
This is kind of more of a budget question. I mean, bathrooms kind of get thrown on, in my view. I'm not belittling the need for downtown bathrooms, but it's on the list of everything else that we need and want in this town. And if we had $100 billion sitting in the bank somewhere, we just do them all. We don't, and so we got to figure out how to prioritize our money. And so to me, I view this as a budget question. It's just like the wish list from the River Commission today. I'd be happy to do 99% of the things they wanted if money wasn't an object. But
Well, I think that the River Commission doesn't actually have their own budget or their own tax revenue, but the Tourism Board does and the DDA. And year over year, they're literally hundreds of thousands of dollars better than they were last year because of increased sales tax. So I think there's the money there that we don't have to have, because who's using these bathrooms primarily are tourists and downtown guests. I mean, again, how many times do locals use them? So I think the money is there, but let's talk to the players who want them and then ask for the incremental funding that they have gotten because of just appreciating tax revenue.
Okay, let me go ahead and try to find a date where they can come to us. Fair enough? Okay, I got a couple more things.
Just so we know, they and we are all us, you know, kind of, the little division thing kind of drives me crazy. It has for 7 years, but anyway, just
yeah, but I think when we talk about like River Commission or whatever, it's they, the other group.
All us.
All us. But anyway.
I don't disagree. You do occasionally have to describe groups. FMLD, I wanted to kind of go forward with the joint partnership grant on the Lover Trail. I tried for South Midland, and I was told by the FMLD board that it would be a bad grant for a partnership grant if we were also going to pursue a regular grant in the same cycle. They do not want to see that. At first, you did not think this would be a very good grant, but then I talked to him yesterday and he said, yeah, give it a shot. It's probably better off than I think.
For what?
The partnership FMLD grant.
And who did you speak to?
What? I'm sorry.
Who did you speak to?
Drew.
Drew.
Is that ready for funding?
Lover Trail? I think if we're concentrating from Newcastle first to Glenwood, yes.
But within the time frame of spending an FMLD grant, I mean, we're talking about a lot of money to do that.
The section from Newcastle has smaller components that are less expensive. If we were starting from our side, I would say absolutely not.
Okay.
But starting from their side, yes.
I didn't realize we would start from their side.
We had to pick a side, and because their side is easier to start, I figure it gives us momentum, and that will help us down the road.
So the FLMD grant that we'd be going for South Midland would not be the partnership grant, to be a sole grant?
Yes.
Okay.
I just can't think of anything better. It's got very specific, they want it to be a partnership grant, but they want it to be like asphalt. And we're not going to build many roads in partnership with anybody else.
Here's a question, and it's just a strategy question, but if the county has an unspoken policy of not granting any county funds to a project that received FMLD funds, and I'm not sure going for an FMLD grant on South Midland is the right choice. Because an FMLD grant, the best we're going to get on a sole FMLD grant is about $500,000. Yeah. And I'm of the opinion they're worth at least 2.5 to 3 from the county on that project.
It is, but I'm also a little worried that if we don't go after FMLD for it, we also don't get county funds. Maybe we can ask them that when we go. Do you think they would tell us when we go on August 6th? That's before the grant is due, so we have time.
My gut tells me what they're going to do is they're going to tell you, go for an FMLD grant. Mm-hmm. And I think that you probably make a really fair point, Mike, that's been their way of avoiding having to fund to the level that they should on a wide variety of roads that relate to communities. So it will be, and if you get an FMLD grant, then they will just look at you and say, we gave you money on the FMLD and we're done. So it's a tactical decision. I think if you ask them, they're going to push you towards FMLD.
If we I know what we were thinking about doing on the joint grant was going for a grant on the roundabout at 4 Mile. Is that correct, Deborah?
That was the thought.
Yeah, what about if we go ahead and bifurcate the project again and say, okay, we're going for an FMLD grant for the roundabout at 4 Mile, and if we get $500,000, we're paying for half of it with FMLD funds, but it's a separate project from the rest of the. I know we're designing it all as one. I understand that, but
I kind of tried that, and they didn't buy it.
They didn't buy that it's a separate. We can do South Midland without the 4 Mile roundabout, and vice versa.
I did. Terry and I did point that out.
To whom?
The FMLD board. We had to go talk to them about 7th Street while I was there. I just kind of tried to gain some insight.
They didn't understand that concept, or that we wouldn't have to build the roundabout?
They did, they just didn't.
Because in my mind, if that project comes in at $12 or $13 million, the first things I'm personally interested in cutting out is the roundabout, the intersection at 3 Mile, the intersection at Cardiff Bridge. No, Cardiff Bridge is all, it's a city street, is that it? That's a city street right now.
Yeah, but there's other driveways and intersections and corrections that equal, I think, about $500,000 there, so.
We can also keep thinking about it.
Can we put a toll at the city-county line and just say, oh, do you want to pass through?
I'm sure there's a variety of things we can do. I guess I'd suggest, because it's late and we're a little stuck on it, that we ponder it. I hate to kick things down the road. I know what my initial gut reaction is, but I don't know.
Bring an ordinance to us at the next meeting. Carl.
Right. I don't know if that's the right one or not, so.
Okay, I give, I'm done.
All right. Carl, anything? No. All right. Anyone want to do a report on a board, committee, or commission meeting?
I do.
Or do we want to just call it Beer 30?
No, mine is quick. I had 2 board meetings, the DDA, which you'd be interested to hear about, and Park and Rec, which I didn't attend. Mr. Gotis?
Yeah, I'd like to speak on that.
You're done?
Huh? I'm letting him report on my Park and Rec board.
Thought that was it.
We heard from the River Commission.
Oh, good. The DDA went through their priority list for 2019. Is that where we're at now?
We're approaching it.
And we'll get, this is mainly for Deborah, so she'll know.
Yes.
But anyway, the DDA board felt like their #1 priority for 2019 should be restrooms. So there probably is some partnership there between them and tourism and maybe chamber and maybe us and some other, who knows. And you know, toilets are tied into sanitary sewer systems. So I'm thinking, you know, there's some sewer fund there somewhere, right? Budget money. Water sewer.
That's our match.
Yeah, no, typically there would be several EQRs apiece, so yeah, you're right, the water and sewer fund could use that money.
Gotta flip that on you, David.
Touche. And then the Downtown Development Authority has some a couple of interesting proposals, which I think that they're wanting to come before us, maybe at the next council meeting. Encourage that.
Yeah, I think we're meeting with them tomorrow to talk about priorities, and then I think maybe they're coming first meeting in August, Catherine, do you remember, or second? Sometime in August.
I think it's the first meeting.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Executive session, kind of a discussion.
I was going to discuss that with our attorney.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to look at it or what the materials are, so I don't know.
Okay.
But I don't want to push that off. If they have some things that are pressing, you know, I think we should pay attention to it sooner than later. Thank you.
All right.
Everybody's like, what about the River Commission?
I didn't go.
Oh. Shelley?
They were just here. You basically got
I went to the Rockland board meeting, but we met with them this morning, so.
I can't think of anything to add.
The Financial Advisory Board met and we reviewed the CHFA, the audit. CAFR, thank you.
And I met with the we had Arts and Culture Board, and I'm trying to find my notes. They had some questions about where they can work, they've got some recommendations for a possible small amount of funding to look at developing a street art program, a process on how to get that approved and get that all.
What do they define as street art?
Well,
someone graffitiing a building or
no graffiti.
Like, are we talking public, like
public art?
Public art, not art, not musicians playing on street corners necessarily.
No, more of public art place.
Okay.
They're also working on, events, but they kind of work with Parks and Rec on that and other groups. So, let me see.
Can I just throw one thought out? For 4 years, my daughter was in the Aspen Music School program. They had a program for local high school kids, and so we attended a huge number of the concerts up there. And you wander around in Aspen on those evenings, and there are duets and trios and quartets and quintets of these very talented musicians playing a variety of music, some classical, some other music. And they just have their, tuba case or whatever it happens to be open, and they're taking donations. What would it take for us to get some of them down here? I mean, is that something that the Arts Board would be interested in considering, I mean, some Friday or Saturday evening, musicians, and that brings up another issue of, and this is a completely different issue, but, can we license our buskers, so that when someone really has no talent, but they have a guitar and they're sitting on the...
I'm going to be the talent police.
No, me. It's going to be me. Because I know it when I see it. I know what talent is when I see it.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, so those are two divergent thoughts, but anyway.
Okay, and the only other concern, they had a concern about there's the big event on Saturday, September 15th for the Hotel Colorado 125th anniversary, and there are events around town. There's something on the pedestrian bridge at the Arts Center. The Arts Guild is doing something. I don't know if there's anything specifically on 7th Street, but they are slightly concerned that the sanitary sewer project might have started before then, and they were requesting that it start after September 15th, so we don't have the street dug up when they want to have this big event, a big historic event. So maybe think about
Start on the 8th, then, is what you're saying?
Scheduling on that. Yeah.
No, we've been working with Christian quite a bit on that event.
Okay.
I don't think we would anticipate starting prior to that.
Okay, that would be great.
At all, that'll obviously be part of that budgeting discussion.
Because I think they're hoping to have some coordinating things maybe under the bridge or in that area. And
They have most of 7th Street, if not all of it, closed down, and under bridge, and the pedestrian, and 6th Street in front of the hotel closed.
Okay.
Working with them and the fire department and everybody else to make it happen.
okay, that's great to hear. I will relay that on. Thanks. That's it.
All right. Any further reports?
Just real short, 50th birthday party for Rudai last Tuesday, Rudai Reservoir. So some of us, might remember 1968, and others, may not have such a current memory, but it was a nice affair. There's a couple hundred people there. Lots of people from the Front Range. The Colorado Water Conservation Board was in town meeting yesterday, and so, and they had speech after speech after speech, and I was kind of proud of the person from our Rudai Water and Power Authority Board who got up and kind of reminded them that, if it hadn't have been for that board and keeping mussels out of that reservoir, that they wouldn't enjoy the benefit so much of the water that they're siphoning off. So, and they tend to put the bite on those folks and say, hey, the state stepped up, the water providers, and now, it's time for you to step up. So it's kind of a nice affair. And the tourism board meets tomorrow. They moved their meeting date, and so are you going to be at that meeting, Todd, tomorrow? Or?
No, you can go.
I can go. All right.
If you have
Yes, I
time.
didn't ask. Yeah,
If you have time.
I'll go.
All right, that's it?
I think so.
We're adjourned.
Yeah, 15 minutes. Didn't even touch it, Carl.